Settle in with me, my friend, and let the world outside grow quiet. As if a soft blanket has been draped across the night, you and I are going to wander together into a world of mountains, rivers, and skies so high they seem to hold eternity itself. This is the story of the Inca Empire, whispered to you slowly, like a lullaby stretched across centuries. As you breathe deeply, imagine yourself wrapped in a cloak of woven alpaca wool, the air cool and thin, and the stars spread across the heavens like seeds scattered in a great celestial field. And here, before we even step deeper, let me offer you a gentle twist. You may have heard that the Inca Empire was a kingdom of vast armies and golden temples, but tonight I will tell you something softer, something quieter. The Inca did not see gold as we do. To them, gold was not wealth in the sense of coins or power. It was the sweat of the sun, a sacred metal that caught and reflected light. It was not meant to be hoarded but to shine, to remind people of their closeness to the heavens. Imagine that. An empire where even the treasures of the earth were viewed not as possessions, but as offerings of beauty and light. That shift alone might carry you further than you expected, don't you think? Stay with me, for this small change in perspective will open doors all night long. The empire of the Incas stretched like a woven path along the spine of the Andes, from what is now Colombia in the north, down through Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, and into Argentina. They called their world Tawantinsuyu, the land of four quarters. For great regions, each connected by roads so carefully laid, that even now, centuries later, their stones still endure under modern feet. Think of that for a moment. A road that was walked by sandals of fiber long ago can still carry you today. Doesn't it soothe the mind to imagine footsteps echoing through time, each one part of an endless procession? Let's turn the lamp a little lower and picture a village in the mountains. It is night, and families gather inside stone homes with thatched roofs. The fire burns low, smoke curling upward through a small hole above. Potatoes roast in the coals, their skins cracking softly. Outside, llamas shift in corrals, bells chiming faintly around their necks. Above, the Milky Way blazes across the thin, clear air, brighter than you have likely ever seen it. The Inca looked to these stars not as faraway lights, but as a living river, filled with animals, spirits, and guides. To them, the sky was another world, folded above their own. Can you feel how small, and yet how held you are in such a vision? Stay with me, because the Incas saw the world in layers. They called them Hanan Pasha, the upper world of gods and stars, Ke Pasha, the middle world of humans, animals, and daily life, and Uku Pasha, the inner world beneath the earth, where ancestors rested, where seeds germinated. Each was not separate, but connected like roots and branches of one great tree. To walk in balance was to live with respect for all three realms, for sky, for soil, for spirit. Isn't it calming to imagine life where nothing is ever lost, only transformed, where death is not a wall but a doorway? And here is another quiet revelation. The Inca left no written language as we know it. Instead, they used quipus, bundles of cords with knots of different colors, lengths, and positions. These knots carried memory, numbers, and records. A storyteller would hold the strings, fingers moving gently across them, recalling harvests, tributes, journeys. Knowledge was not pressed into paper, but woven into fiber, soft, flexible, tangible. Imagine holding a string that carries not only numbers, but the breath of a story, and how soothing it would be to let your fingers rest on such a bridge of memory. As you breathe slowly, picture the empire's heart. Cusco, nestled in the valley, shaped in the form of a great puma, it was the center of Tawantinsuyu. From its plaza radiated the roads to the four quarters. The walls of its temples were built of stone so precisely shaped that not even a blade of grass could slip between them. And yet, despite their strength, they did not loom heavy or harsh. They seemed instead to hum with balance, their patterns like music made of stone. To walk those streets, hearing the murmur of fountains, seeing the sun spill over polished walls, was to know you were part of something vast and steady. Stay close now, because this steadiness was not only for kings and nobles. The Inca wove their society around elu, communities bound by kinship. Land was shared, tasks divided, harvest distributed. Each person belonged, each had a place, each contributed and received. Work was not a lonely burden, but a shared rhythm, like voices singing together in the fields. Imagine bending low to plant potatoes, hearing laughter nearby, feeling the soil cool in your hands, knowing the harvest would feed not only your family, but your neighbors too. Doesn't that ease the heart, the sense that you are part of a whole? And here is a gentle reassurance. Even their architecture, whispered care. Terraces step down mountainsides, catching soil and water, turning steep slopes into gardens. Channels of stone carried water to fountains, to baths, to crops, all flowing as if guided by invisible hands. The Inca listened to the land, shaped their lives to its rhythm, and in return the land held them. This harmony is what allowed them to flourish, not through dominance alone, but through careful listening, quiet adaptation. Doesn't it calm you to think of mountains not as obstacles, but as companions, guiding the shape of your home in fields? Now, let's pause together in a moment of stillness. Imagine yourself standing on a high Andean ridge at dusk. The wind is cool, the air smells of earth and rain. Far below, villages glow faintly with hearth fires. Llamas tread narrow paths, bells chiming softly. Above, the first stars appear. You wrap your cloak tighter, feel the texture of woven threads, hear the hush of your own breath. Time slows. The Inca world surrounds you, not as something distant, but as something alive, eternal, cradling you. Stay with me, because in the chapters ahead we will walk gently through this empire, its roads, its homes, its rituals, its daily meals, its songs, its ways of seeing time itself. We will not rush. We will drift one detail at a time, like stepping stones across a river. You will come to know not only the grandeur of Sapa Incas and temples, but the warmth of kitchens, the sound of rain on thatch, the laughter of children rolling potatoes across a courtyard. For history is not only in crowns and battles, but in the breath of ordinary life, repeated softly until it becomes memory. And before this hook closes, let me offer you a final reassurance. You are safe here. There will be no sudden noises, no sharp turns, no jagged words. Only the steady murmur of story, the calm unfolding of a people who built their lives among peaks and valleys, close to sky and earth. As you rest tonight, the Inca Empire will hold you like the mountains held them, firm, steady, unhurried. In a moment, we will step into Chapter 1, where we will wander more deeply into the highland valleys, discovering the rhythm of Inca homes, fields, and families. But for now, let the hook settle into you like a soft lullaby, a promise that what lies ahead will be gentle, vivid, and full of calm companionship. Breathe slowly with me now, for we are stepping into the heart of the Inca world. Not yet into temples or thrones, but into the homes where warmth gathered, where meals were shared, where life pulsed most gently. If you close your eyes, imagine the valley of Cusco before you. Mountains stand like guardians, their slopes carved with terraces of stone. The air is crisp, scented faintly with earth and wood smoke. At the valley floor, the Urubamba River winds like a silver thread, glimmering beneath the sun, then fading into softness at dusk. It is here in these valleys that the daily rhythm of the Inca people took shape, steady, reliable, as natural as the turning of seasons. And here is a small twist for you, a quiet one but worth holding close. While we often think of empires in terms of kings and conquests, the Inca Empire was built not from battles alone, but from kitchens, fields, and families. The true strength of Tawantinsuyu lay not only in Cusco's temples, but in thousands of households where potatoes were roasted, quinoa simmered, and stories told beside the fire. Stay with me, for in the ordinary lies the extraordinary, and in these homes we find the secret heart of an empire. Picture an Inca house. Its walls are stone, fitted with care, and the roof is thatched with itchy grass from the highlands. There is one room, simple and warm, a hearth glowing at the center. In the corner, clay jars hold maize and beans. On woven mats, children play quietly, rolling small potatoes, their laughter soft but lively. A mother tends a fire, stirring a pot of chicha, a maize drink, while her husband mends farming tools nearby. The air is alive not with grandeur but with comfort, with a familiar murmur of daily life. Isn't it soothing to imagine that history is not only carved in monuments but whispered in kitchens? Stay with me, because the Inca world was woven around the Elu, a kinship group, a community that shared land and labor. Each family contributed to the fields. Each received in return. No one left adrift. Fields of potatoes, maize, and quinoa stretched across terraces, tended together. Irrigation channels carried mountain water down to crops, trickling steadily, as the earth itself whispered its support. Work was steady but shared, like a song sung by many voices. To rise each morning was to know your place, your role, your belonging. Isn't that a comfort? To imagine a life where you are always held by the community around you? And here is another detail, small but rich. The Inca raised guinea pigs called kiwi within their homes. At night, as the fire dimmed, the little animals scurried across the floor, their soft squeaks a familiar lullaby. Children would feed them scraps, laugh at their darting movements, and watch as they huddled together for warmth. Imagine lying down on a woven blanket, the hearth glowing faintly, hearing the rustle of these small companions. Even the tiniest creatures were part of the household's rhythm, part of the empire's quiet heartbeat. Let's pause now and step outside into the courtyard of such a home. The night air is cool, filled with the fragrance of damp earth. In the distance, other fires flicker, their smoke rising into the sky. The Milky Way stretches above, so bright it seems a river of light. The Incas saw shapes within it, llamas, foxes, serpents, each a reminder that the heavens were not empty but alive. Children gazed upward, guided by their elders' stories, learning to see not just stars, but companions, ancestors, protectors. As you breathe, imagine that same sky above you now, ancient yet familiar, a sky that has watched over humanity forever. Stay with me, because food was not only sustenance but ritual. Potatoes, thousands of varieties, were the staple. Some were roasted, others freeze-dried into chuno, preserved for years against famine. Maize was ground into flour, boiled into soups, brewed into drinks. Quinoa shimmered in bowls, tiny seeds cooked until soft. Each meal was simple yet layered with care, the result of terraces, irrigation, and countless hands working together. When families sat down to eat, they were not only nourishing their bodies, but affirming their place within the Elu, within Tontinsu itself. Doesn't it ease your thoughts to imagine history not as battles, but as shared bowls of food, warm and steady? And here's the reassurance. The Inca valued reciprocity above all. This principle, called Aini, meant that giving and receiving were bound together. If you help your neighbor build a terrace, they would help you harvest. If you shared food, you would be fed in turn. This was not charity, but balance, a way of life as natural as breathing. It is soothing, isn't it, to think of a world where every effort is returned, where no kindness is lost, where you are never alone in your labor or your rest. Now, let's walk with gentle steps to fields. Dawn is rising, and the mountains glow pink with sunlight. Men and women move together, hoes in hand, their motions rhythmic, almost musical. Llamas graze nearby, carrying baskets of tools and food. Songs drift through the air, work songs that lighten the body, make hours pass like minutes. Children help, gathering smaller stones, laughing as they chase each other along the terraces. Farming is not drudgery, but a shared act, one that binds the living to the soil and to each other. Close your eyes for a moment and hear that song, steady and low, blending with the sound of wind in the grass. Stay with me, because the Incas' relationship with the land was sacred. Mountains, or apis, were seen as living beings, protectors who watched over the valleys. Offerings of coca leaves, corn beer, or small figurines were made to them, tokens of gratitude. Streams, fields, and even stones held spirit, and to work the land was to enter into dialogue with it. Each terrace was more than soil. It was a canvas of devotion, shaped with care and respect. Doesn't it soothe the soul to imagine labor not as domination, but as communion? Each act a conversation with the earth? And here's a revelation to carry. Though Cusco was the empire's heart, the Incas' true strength lay in their ability to bind diverse peoples together through shared labor and shared rituals. Families in the highlands, the valleys, the coastal deserts all became threads in one great fabric, woven tighter by the rhythm of Elu life. Unity did not come only from conquest, but from countless acts of cooperation. The hum of markets, the songs of fields, the laughter of homes. These were the empire's true foundation stones. Let us return now to the hearth at night. The family has eaten, the children drowsy, the fire glowing low. A grandfather begins to tell a story. His voice is steady, carrying tales of ancestors who emerged from caves, of Viracocha the creator, of journeys across mountains. The children listen, eyes heavy, the adults nodding quietly. The room smells of wood smoke and roasted maize, the air thick with warmth and memory. The story is not written in books, but carried in breath, in voice, in the hush of night. Isn't it calming to know that stories survive not because they are carved in stone, but because they are whispered into the ears of the young? Stay close now, because as this chapter draws to its gentle end, we see that the Inca Empire was not first a story of kings, but homes, of fires glowing at dusk, of terraces green with crops, of families working, laughing, resting together. It was an empire woven not only with roads and temples, but with threads of daily kindness, balance, and belonging. And in that weaving, it created something enduring, not only a state, but a way of life. As you breathe slowly, let the image linger. A valley lit with hearth fires, mountains standing watch, stars glittering above. You are safe here, held within the Alu part of the whole. And as we drift forward, we will carry this warmth with us into Chapter 2, where we will walk the roads of the empire, the great network of stone paths that tied valleys, mountains, and coastlines together like veins of a living body. Stay with me now, for we are stepping out of the warm household of Chapter 1 and placing our sandals on the roads of the Inca. These roads were more than paths of stone. They were the veins of an empire, carrying life, news, food, and memory across mountains and valleys. The Inca called their network the Capac Nan, the Great Road, and it stretched for tens of thousands of kilometers, winding over peaks, plunging into valleys, skirting deserts, and tracing the edges of the Pacific coast. To walk it was to move not just through space, but through the heartbeat of Tawantinsuyu. And here is a soft twist, quiet but striking. These roads were not built for wheels. The Inca had no carts, no horses, no oxen. Instead, their roads were for feet, human feet, and the padded hooves of llamas. Everything that moved upon them was carried on backs, in slings and woven bags, or on the steady steps of pack animals. Imagine an empire without wheels, yet with roads so precise, so enduring, that many still stand today. Isn't it soothing to realize that strength can take forms we might not expect? Picture now a narrow road climbing along the side of a mountain. Stones are fitted with care, forming steps where the slope is steep. On one side, cliffs rise, dark and solid. On the other, the valley drops away, filled with terraces and streams glimmering far below. A line of travelers moves steadily upward, men with baskets of maize, women with bundles of cloth, llamas carrying potatoes and dried fish. Their breath puffs in the cool air, their sandals scuff against the stones. The road hums with quiet activity, no noise of wheels or hooves striking hard, only the soft rhythm of footsteps. Stay close, because these roads were more than simple trails. They were engineered with astonishing care. Where rivers blocked the way, the Inca built suspension bridges of woven grass, arching lightly across rushing water. Where slopes threatened to crumble, they built retaining walls. Where deserts stretched empty, they laid markers and shelters, guiding travelers across the heat. Every road carried not only people but also confidence, the sense that no distance was too great, no terrain too wild for the empire's reach. Imagine reassurance of knowing that from any valley, from any village, you could step onto a path that would connect you to the whole. And here is another layer of calm. Along these roads stood tambos, way stations spaced at regular intervals. Some were small, just a place to rest and find water. Others were larger, offering food, storage, and shelter for entire groups. Messengers stopped here. Travelers, too, their burdens eased by a place of rest. Picture one at twilight, a cluster of stone buildings near a spring. A fire glows, llamas graze. Travelers sit quietly eating roasted maize. The air smells of smoke and earth. The stars rise above. Even on the road, even far from home, the empire provided comfort. Doesn't it soothe the heart to know that every journey had its pauses, its hearts along the way? Stay with me, because one of the most remarkable features of these roads was the system of chasquis, fleet-footed messengers who carried news, orders, and gifts across the empire. They ran in relays, each covering a short stretch before passing a message or bundle to the next runner. So well were they organized that a message could travel hundreds of kilometers in a single day. Picture them now. A young man waiting on a hilltop, scanning the road. He hears the footfalls of the approaching runner, sees the relay baton or knotted quipu past him, and then he takes off, running swiftly down the path, his breath steady, his stride confident. The road itself seems alive with their movement, each message a thread tying the empire closer together. And here's the gentle twist. These messages were not always words. Sometimes they were quipus, knotted strings carrying numbers or symbols. Sometimes they were goods, fish on the coast, coca leaves from the valleys, or news of harvests and festivals. Information flowed not through letters on paper, but through knots, voices, and footsteps. Communication was not silent, but embodied, alive, carried by breath and movement. Isn't it common to think of knowledge not locked in ink, but woven into fiber and passed hand to hand? Let's turn the lamp lower and imagine walking these roads ourselves. It is early morning, mist rising from the valleys. The stones are damp beneath your sandals, the air cool against your skin. Ahead, the path winds between terraces filled with green crops, their leaves glistening with dew. Farmers wave as you pass, their laughter rises with the sound of water channels trickling nearby. You carry a small bundle, perhaps potatoes or cloth, but the weight does not trouble you. Each step feels steady, part of a larger rhythm, as the road itself carries you forward. Stay close, because these roads were not only for practical movement, they also carried rituals. When armies marched, they did so in formation along these paths. When nobles traveled, they were borne in litters, accompanied by musicians and attendants. When sacred objects were moved, ceremonies paused at tambos, offerings made of mountains, rivers, and sky. The roads themselves became sacred ribbons, binding people not only to each other but to the cosmos. Imagine standing on one at night, torchlight flickering, hearing drums in the distance, knowing that you are on a path that stretches beyond sight, beyond horizon, into the heart of an empire. And here's a reassurance. Though vast, the roads made the empire feel intimate. Villages tucked in high valleys, farms perched on terraces, coastal towns along the sea, all were linked. No community was forgotten, no valley too remote. The roads gave shape to unity, turning distance into connection. Isn't it soothing to picture a world where no one is out of reach, where paths stretch toward you from every direction, steady and welcoming? Let's pause at one more scene, a suspension bridge of woven grass, swaying gently across a gorge. The river roars below, white and restless, but the bridge holds firm. Travelers step carefully, one by one, the cords creaking softly. On the other side, more roads stretch upward into the hills. Imagine the courage and care woven into each strand of that bridge, renewed regularly by villagers, maintained with ceremony. Crossing is not frightening but communal, each person trusting the strength of the weaving, the work of countless hands. Doesn't it calm you to think of safety built not from iron, but from grass, renewed again and again? Stay with me now, because as this chapter eases toward its close, the roads remind us of something essential. That connection is the true strength of any empire. Not gold, not armies, but the ability to bring people together, to carry voices and goods, to weave distant valleys into one fabric. The Kapaknen was more than stone. It was memory, community, and rhythm stretched across mountains. As you breathe slowly, picture once more the empire from above. Mountains vast, rivers winding, valleys green. Across them all, roads shimmer like threads, connecting, guiding, holding. You stand on one, the horizon wide, the air cool. You are part of the flow, never alone, always carried. And as we step forward, we will follow these roads into Chapter 3, where we will explore the markets and exchanges they made possible, the places where goods, stories, and friendships mingle beneath the bright Andean sky. Come closer now, and let us leave the roads behind us, those long ribbons of stone and woven bridges, and step into the places where those roads converged. The Inca Empire's markets were not merely spaces of trade. but gatherings of rhythm, sound, and color, where people carried the pulse of valleys, coasts, and mountains into one shared heartbeat. Imagine, if you will, the morning sun spilling over a plaza, its light warming stone walls, as voices rise, footsteps shuffle, and the fragrance of foods mingles in the crisp Andean air. And here's a quiet twist to carry with you. While many empires dealt in coins, the Inca had no money at all. There were no clinking purses, no merchants weighing gold in scales. Instead, exchange was made through barter and through the great system of state redistribution. Potatoes from the highlands might be traded for peppers from the valleys. Dried fish from the coast exchanged for maize from fertile terraces. To the Inca, wealth was not measured in coins but in balance. Balance of crops, of community, of contributions given and received. Isn't it soothing to think of a world where trade was not a clamor of coins but the quiet hum of mutual exchange? Stay with me, because these markets were vibrant but not chaotic. Each had its place, its rhythm. In one corner, women displayed textiles, mantles and tunics woven with intricate designs, their colors reflecting dyes from plants and minerals. In another, farmers spread out baskets of maize, quinoa, beans, and herbs, their scents mingling in the air. Nearby, fish lay drying in the sun, brought from coastal waters on the backs of llamas. Potatoes, small and many-colored, filled baskets like jewels of the earth. The plaza itself seemed to bloom with abundance, as though each region had poured its gifts into a single shared space. Picture yourself now wandering among these stalls. The ground beneath you is warm stone, smoothed by countless feet. A woman offers you a taste of roasted maize kernels, their crunch filling your mouth with smoky sweetness. Another shows you a textile, its pattern repeating geometric forms that seem to echo the terraces carved into mountain slopes. Children laugh as they chase one another between stalls, their arms full of tiny snacks, their eyes wide at the variety. The air hums with language, Quechua flowing like a song, familiar and rhythmic. Isn't it comforting to imagine such a gathering, full of movement yet never rushed, full of abundance yet never overwhelming? And here's another gentle revelation. These markets were not only for food or cloth, but also for stories. Travelers brought news of distant valleys, of festivals, of births and harvests. Songs passed from one region to another, carried by minstrels. Even marriages might be arranged here, alliances woven among families. The market was not simply an economic hub, but a social hearth where community was refreshed and ties strengthened. Each voice, each exchange, was a thread in a much larger weaving. Stay with me, because the Inca also relied on state-managed storehouses, great warehouses called calcas that lined the roads and villages. From these, officials redistributed food, cloth, tools, and more, ensuring that each community received what it needed. In times of famine or hardship, the storehouses opened, their goods flowing to those in need. This system, woven together with the markets, created a world of security where hunger was softened and survival was a shared promise. Imagine the comfort of living in a place where not only your family, but the empire itself watched over your well-being. Now, let's lower the lamp a little and step into the quieter corners of the market. Here, healers sit with baskets of herbs, coca leaves, chili peppers, mint, and roots that promise relief from pain or sickness. A man chews coca slowly, its bitterness easing the strain of altitude. Another lays out feathers, shells, and beads, objects both beautiful and sacred, gathered from coast and jungle. There is no separation between the practical and the spiritual. Both are threads of the same cloth. Even here, among goods and foods, you feel the presence of ritual, of devotion, of life woven seamlessly with reverence. Stay with me, because food itself was sacred in the Inca world. Maize was not only eaten, but offered in rituals, brewed into chicha beer, poured as libations for the earth and sky. Potatoes were stored carefully, dried into chuno to last through years of hardship. Quinoa, small and shining, filled bowls at meals and ceremonies alike. To eat was not only to nourish the body, but to honor the gifts of Pachamama, Mother Earth. Each bite was an act of gratitude, each meal a quiet prayer. Isn't it calming to imagine meals not rushed, not careless, but infused with reverence? And here is reassurance. While the empire stretched vast, its people never felt strangers to one another. In markets, One might hear accents from valleys far away, see textiles woven with patterns unfamiliar yet beautiful, taste foods from climates never visited. Yet all were united under the same sky, walking the same roads, sharing the same rituals. Diversity did not divide but enriched, each region offering its gift to the whole. Doesn't it ease the mind to imagine difference not as distance, but as harmony, each voice part of one chorus? Let's pause now and sit at the edge of the plaza as the sun lowers. The market slowly quiets, baskets empty, goods traded, voices softening. Families gather their children. Llamas are loaded with remaining bundles. The air smells faintly of roasted maize and herbs. Torches are lit as twilight settles, their glow flickering against stone walls. You sit quietly, watching, feeling no need to hurry. The market's hum lingers like a lullaby, steady and warm. Stay with me, because in the next chapter we will move from markets into the weaving cloth itself. Textiles so fine and so meaningful that they spoke louder than words. But carry this image with you now. A plaza alive with food and color. People gathered in peace, each item exchanged not with coins but with trust, with reciprocity, with shared rhythm. The market is not noise and chaos, but calm abundance, a reflection of the Inca world itself. Steady, balanced, and enduring. Stay with me, my friend, for now we move from the plazas and markets into a quieter, more intimate space. The world of Inca textiles. If the roads were the veins of the empire and the markets its heartbeat, then textiles were its language, a silent yet eloquent script woven into cloth. To the Inca, fabric was not just protection from the cold mountain air. It was identity, offering, and art. A finely woven tunic could speak of your role, your elu, even your closeness to the sun. Let us wander into this world, soft and steady, as though our fingers were trailing across threads on a loom. And here's a gentle twist, early and subtle. While in many cultures metal or jewels stood as the highest form of wealth, in the Inca Empire, cloth was treasured even more deeply. A fine piece of cumbai, delicate fabric woven with alpaca or vicuña wool, could be worth more than gold. Gold reflected the sun, yes, but cloth carried warmth, story, and identity. Isn't it soothing to imagine a society where the soft rustle of fabric was more precious than the clang of metal? Picture a weaving house now, in a village high in the Andes. Women sit in the courtyard, their looms stretched between stakes driven into the earth. Their fingers move quickly but gently, passing threads back and forth, creating patterns that seem to ripple like rivers, climb like mountains, or spiral like stars. Children play nearby, imitating the motions with strings of their own. The air hums not only with work, but with conversation, laughter, the occasional song. The weaving is not solitary. It is shared, woven together with voices and lives. Stay close, because each textile carried meaning. Patterns told stories. Colors carried significance. Red might symbolize life and conquest, black the earth and creation, green the fertile fields, yellow the warmth of sun. Geometric motifs mirrored the landscapes of terraces, rivers, and peaks. To wear a tunic was to wear a statement, not in vanity but in belonging. Your garment whispered who you were, where you came from, and what threads tied you to the empire. Isn't it calming to imagine clothing not as fashion to chase, but as a steady reflection of your place in the world? And here is another detail, small yet vivid. Some cloth was so finely woven, with threads so delicate, that modern weavers still marvel at its precision. Fabrics made from vicuña wool, an animal related to the llama and alpaca, with the softest fleece, were reserved for nobility and rituals. Imagine the sensation of such cloth against your skin. Lighter than breath, warmer than fire, softer than a whisper. To the Inca, this was not indulgence, but reverence, a way to honor the gods and the people who served them. Let's lower the lamp and look closer at the process. The wool was spun into thread with spindles, women twisting fibers with practiced ease. Dyes were made from plants, minerals, and insects. Cochineal beetles producing brilliant reds, indigo plants deep blues, and native flowers soft yellows. Each dye required patience, knowledge, and care. The loom itself was simple but effective, wooden stakes and crossbars holding the warped threads taut as the weaver passed the weft back and forth. The result was not just fabric, but language, a language only the patient fingers and knowing eyes could fully read. Stay with me, because textiles were more than daily wear. They were gifts, tributes, and sacred offerings. When the Sapa Inca, the emperor, bestowed cloth upon his nobles, it was not merely to clothe them but to honor them, to bind them closer. When temples needed offerings, cloth was burned, its smoke rising as a gift to the gods. When two families joined, woven mantles exchanged hands, sealing the bond. Cloth, unlike stone or gold, was alive. It could be worn, shared, consumed, and remade. Doesn't it soothe the mind to imagine such a gentle medium holding so much meaning? Picture yourself now at a festival in Cusco. Nobles stride across the plaza, their tunics bright with colors and patterns. Priests wear garments shimmering with feathers, dyed threads glistening in the sun. Women display cloaks woven with diamonds and zigzags, symbols of mountains and rivers. The air is alive with movement, not from banners of metal, but from fabric fluttering in the breeze. The city itself seems wrapped in a living tapestry, each person a thread within it. You watch, heart steady, marveling at the beauty born not of conquest, but of patient hands and woven fibers. And here's the reassurance. Textiles also connected the living with the ancestors. Cloths were buried with the dead, wrapping them in warmth for their journey to the other world. These garments, preserved in dry Andean climates, still speak today, their colors vibrant after centuries. The Incas saw no harsh division between life and death, and textiles carry that belief, embracing both the body here and the spirit beyond. Isn't it common to think of fabric as a bridge, soft and enduring between worlds? Stay close, because weaving was not only women's work, but also sacred duty. Chosen women, called aklas, lived in special houses, weaving fine garments for the state, for the temples, for the Sapa Inca himself. Their hands shaped the empire's identity thread by thread. Yet even in humble homes, weaving was honored, a skill passed from mothers to daughters, whispered across generations. Each garment became part of something greater, a fabric not only of wool, but of continuity. Now, let's pause at twilight in a weaving village. The day's work is done, the looms set aside. Women gather near the fire, spinning thread while telling stories. The air smells of smoke and herbs. Children curl against blankets. The stars emerge above. A mother finishes a piece, folding it gently, smoothing the fibers with her palm. She sets aside, knowing it will clothe her child, warm her husband, or perhaps serve as an offering. The night grows quiet, the fabric resting like memory. Isn't it soothing to linger here, where work and life flow seamlessly together? Stay with me, because as this chapter drifts toward its end, we see that textiles were more than art or utility. They were the empire itself, symbols of unity, of reciprocity, of reverence. Gold may gleam, stone may endure, but fabric wrapped the body, warmed the spirit, and carried meaning as intimate as breath. To touch an Inca textile was to touch the heart of Tontinsiu. As you breathe slowly, carry this image, a loom stretched in the courtyard, threads glowing in the light, fingers moving steadily, voices humming softly. The empire is not distant but close, woven in every thread, held in every pattern. And as we drift forward, we will step into Chapter 5, where we will explore the sacred relationship the Inca held with their mountains, rivers, and sky, discovering how nature itself was woven into the empire's gentle rhythm. Settle yourself a little deeper beneath the blanket, and let us walk together now into a gentler realm, where stone and sky meet, and where the Inca found not simply land to inhabit, but spirits to revere. To live in the Andes was not only to survive amidst peaks and valleys, but to dwell in a world alive with presence. Mountains were not silent masses of rock. They were apis, sacred guardians watching over valleys and villages. Rivers were not mere currents. They were lifelines, voices of the earth flowing to the sea. The sky above was not emptiness, but a great canvas, filled with constellations that whispered guidance. And here is a soft twist to carry into your thoughts. Unlike so many civilizations that place their gods in distant heavens, unreachable and removed, the Inca found their deities in the very world around them. The sacred was not far away. It was under their feet, in their fields, in the peaks rising above. This closeness meant that every act of life, planting a seed, drawing water, gazing at the stars, was at once practical and devotional. Doesn't it calm the heart to think of holiness woven so intimately into daily life, where nothing was separate, nothing was without meaning? Stay with me, and let us imagine a highland village at dawn. The air is sharp and clean, carrying the faint rustle of straw roofs and the calls of herders driving their llamas. As the sun begins to crest, its rays strike the snowy peak above. The people pause, faces lifted, hands offering coca leaves. This is not superstition, but relationship, a greeting to the APU that has watched them through the night, a gesture of gratitude and respect. Life flows with reverence, as steady as the breath that fills your chest. Now turn with me toward the rivers. They tumble down from glaciers, singing against stone, carrying silt that feeds the terraces. Farmers scoop water with canals, guiding it with care to their fields. But the water is not only resource, it is spirit. To drink is to share in its essence. To bathe is to renew. To pour libation is to give back. Each river connects to another, flowing toward the ocean, where the great Mama Coca, the sea mother, resides. Can you feel the serenity of knowing every drop carries story? Every current holds companionship? Stay with me, because the stars too spoke in ways as clear as rivers. At night, families lay on woven mats, gazing upward. But here is something that may surprise you. The Inca did not only see constellations made of stars. They also saw dark constellations, shapes formed in the black spaces between the stars, especially within the Milky Way. A llama, a serpent, a toad, all formed not by points of light, but by the soft shadows between them. Isn't it soothing to imagine lying under the night sky, seeing not just brightness, but the darkness too as part of the great design? The Milky Way itself, which the Inca called Mayu, was understood as a celestial river, reflecting the rivers below. To look at the sky was to look into a mirror, where earth and heavens echoed one another. The llamas herded by day had their counterparts in the stars above. The water flowing through canals mirrored the river of light, spanning the sky. Life was not divided but reflected, one realm flowing seamlessly into the next. Pause with me for a moment, and imagine yourself standing atop a mountain ridge at twilight. The sky deepens into indigo, stars beginning to glimmer. You hear the wind moving across stone, steady and low. In that vastness, you do not feel small. You feel accompanied, part of a chorus. The mountain is alive. The stars are awake. The river far below hums softly. You are surrounded, upheld, and cherished by the world itself. Stay with me, because the Inca built their temples to align with these sacred landscapes. In Cusco, the great temple of Coricancha was dedicated to Inti, the sun, its golden walls catching the first rays of dawn. Windows framed solstices and equinoxes, allowing the light to enter precisely, reminding all that time itself was guided by the heavens. Across the empire, shrines were placed where mountains met sky, or springs bubbled from stone, or caves opened into earth. These were not random sites, but huacas, places with a veil between worlds thinned. Doesn't it calm the spirit to know that the land itself was a temple, each corner alive with meaning? And here is reassurance. The people did not fear their deities as distant rulers. They honored them as companions. Offerings were made not out of terror, but of reciprocity. Chicha beer poured to the ground before drinking, coca leaves tucked into crevices, tiny figurines buried in the soil, all gestures of gratitude. To give was to acknowledge that one was never alone, never without care. This way of life wove comfort into even the smallest act. Now, let's walk slowly into a festival day. Imagine a procession winding through Cusco, dancers in bright textiles moving to the beat of drums. They pause at shrines, leaving offerings. Priests raise vessels of maize beer to the sun, pouring some to the earth, drinking the rest. The crowd sways together, voices rising in songs that call to the Apis and the rivers, the stars and the ancestors. Yet even in celebration, the tone is not frantic. It is steady, reverent, joyous without excess. The city breathes together, in harmony with land and sky. Stay close, because this relationship with nature brought comfort in times of hardship as well. When drought struck, people gathered at rivers, praying, singing, offering. When illness spread, shamans spoke with the spirits of mountains and waters, seeking healing. There was no despair without dialogue, no silence without supplication. The world might test, but it also listened. Can you feel the reassurance in that thought? The sense that even in trial, you were never left unheard? Let us rest now in a highland field at night. The crops are tucked into terraces. The llamas are gathered. The fires burn low. Above, the Milky Way stretches, bright and silent. You lay back on a woven blanket, feeling the earth's firmness beneath, the sky's vastness above. The air is cool, but your cloak is warm. The stars steady companions. As you breathe, the boundaries blur. The mountain's breath is your breath. The river's song your song. The stars shimmer your shimmer. You are woven into the world, a thread in its living fabric. Stay with me a little longer, because in the next chapter we will wander into the rituals and ceremonies that gave shape to this devotion, the dances, offerings, and sacred gatherings that brought people together in joy and reverence. But carry this image into your dreams. Mountains watching, rivers singing, stars whispering, all alive, all near, all part of the same great lullaby. Stay close now, as we step from the quiet fields and starry skies into the gentle rhythm of gatherings, where ceremony met song, and where the Inca people celebrated both the cycles of time and the steady bond between earth and sky. Rituals in the Inca Empire were not moments apart from life. They were life, shaped into dance, music, and offering. Each gesture carried weight. Each chant flowed into the next, binding the community to the deities they revered, to the ancestors they remembered, and to one another. And here is a gentle twist to keep with you. While many might picture ceremonies as rigid or heavy, the Inca found balance between solemnity and joy. Rituals were not meant to frighten or to burden. They were meant to harmonize, to steady the pulse of the people with the pulse of the cosmos. A festival could be reverent and still filled with laughter, sacred and still vibrant with dance. Doesn't it calm the spirit to think of a faith where devotion was shared through joy, where the sacred was not distant but present in warmth and togetherness? Picture with me now the great plaza of Cusco, its stone walls gleaming in the morning light. Thousands gather, their textiles bright with color, their voices a low murmur like waves lapping against the shore. At the center stands the Sap Inca, resplendent in garments of woven gold and crimson, his headdress crowned with feathers that catch the sun. Around him stand priests, nobles, dancers, and musicians. The air carries the scent of burning herbs, of maize beer brewing, of flowers scattered across stone. The festival of Inti, the great celebration of the sun, is about to begin. Stay with me, because the people did not only watch, they participated. Farmers brought baskets of maize, potatoes, and quinoa's offerings. Shepherds brought llamas, their wool adorned with ribbons. Children carried small clay figurines, shaped with care, to be left at shrines. Each offering, whether humble or grand, was part of the chorus. To give was to join the song, to say, I am here, I belong, I honor. Doesn't it soothe the heart to imagine devotion expressed not in isolation, but in shared gestures, each person adding a note to the melody of the whole? The rituals unfolded with care. Priests raised golden vessels of chicha, foaming and fragrant, pouring some to the earth before sipping themselves. Dancers swayed in lines, their feet tracing patterns that echoed the constellations above. Drums thudded softly, steady as a heartbeat. Flutes sang high and clear, voices lifted in chant. Time seemed to dissolve, replaced by rhythm, by unity, by a sense that heaven and earth had drawn close, touching in the heart of the city. Stay close, because rituals were not only for grand festivals, but for the quiet turns of the year. When planting began, families gathered in their fields, burying coca leaves or sprinkling maize beer onto the soil, asking Pachamama to bless the seeds. When the harvest came, gratitude flowed in songs, meals, and offerings. Even the smallest task, repairing a canal, weaving a garment, preparing a meal, could be begun with a whispered prayer, a tiny act of ritual. In this way, every season, every day, carried threads of devotion. And here is another small but soothing detail. Music was itself sacred. Drums carved from hollowed wood and stretched with hides, flutes made from cane or bone, conch shells that roar like the sea. All were instruments of dialogue, voices that spoke to gods and mountains. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a procession, the sound of drums steady against your chest, the flutes winding like bird song in the air. The music is not meant to dazzle, but to connect, to carry words beyond language. Doesn't it ease the mind to think of music, not as noise, but as prayer carried on a wind? Let us step now into the smaller rituals of the household. In a simple stone home, a family gathers around the hearth. The fire crackles softly, llamas rest nearby, children curl against blankets. Before the meal begins, a small portion is set aside, placed carefully on the ground for Pachamama. A cup of chicha is lifted, a few drops poured onto the earth before the first sip is taken. These gestures are quiet, unhurried, yet profound. They weave the family into the same fabric as the empire's great festivals, each home a tiny reflection of the cosmos. Stay with me, because rituals also honor the ancestors. Mummies of revered elders were often brought into ceremonies, seated in places of honor, clothed in fine garments, and offered food and drink as though they were still present. To the Inca, the past was not gone but living, the dead still part of the circle. Imagine the comfort of knowing that your loved ones never left you entirely, that they could sit by your side in celebration, their presence felt in warmth and continuity. And here's reassurance. Though the Inca Empire stretched vast, rituals connected all its parts. In valleys and coastlands, in high mountains and jungle edges, people paused at the same times, honored the same cycles, lifted their voices in harmony. Diversity of foods, accents, and customs did not fracture, but enriched the rituals. Each community offered in its own way. It all turned toward the same sun, the same mountains, the same ancestors. Doesn't it soothe you to imagine a unity so wide yet so gentle, woven across landscapes by shared devotion? Let's pause now at twilight, as a festival day draws to its close. The plaza quiets. Torches flicker, dancers rest, musicians set down their instruments. The Sapa Inca returns to his palace, the priests to their temples, the people to their homes. Yet the warmth of the day lingers. The sound of drums still echoes faintly, the taste of chicha still sweet on the tongue, the sight of bright textiles still vivid in memory. The festival has ended, but its harmony carries on, like a song that hums even after the last note has faded. Stay with me, because in the next chapter we will wander further into the sacred geography of the Inca, exploring how they mapped their world through Sikhs, lines of shrines radiating outward, connecting Cusco to the land. But for now, rest with this image, a circle of people dancing in rhythm, offerings laid with care, music rising into the sky, and above it all, the steady gaze of the sun, blessing the devotion of those who honored it with joy and reverence. Let us walk slowly now, as though with bare feet on cool stone, into one of the most fascinating and tender aspects of the Inca Empire, the Sikh lines of Cusco. Imagine the city as the very heart of the empire, its walls and streets pulsing with life. From this center, invisible threads stretched outward, connecting the capital to the mountains, valleys, rivers, and sacred places beyond. These were the Sikhs, lines of shrines and sacred points, weaving together the empire not only in stone but in spirit. And here's the soft twist to carry with you early. While many imagine ancient maps as parchment covered in ink, the Inca carried their map in the land itself. To walk along a Sikh line was to trace a route of memory, devotion, and geography all at once. These lines were not drawn with ink but with footsteps, offerings, and rituals. Isn't it soothing to think of a world where a map was not a lifeless diagram, but a living journey you could walk, a gentle reminder that you were always connected to the center? Stay with me and picture Cusco itself. The city was laid out like a puma, its great stone walls curving into shapes of body and tail, its head formed by the fortress of Sacsayhuaman. From the heart of this sacred animal, the Sikhs extended, 41 lines in total, radiating like sunbeams or like the strands of a woven loom. Along these lines lay hundreds of huacas, shrines that might be springs, rocks, caves, temples, or even old trees. Each waka held its own meaning, its own spirit, yet together they form a network that mirrored the cosmos. Now, imagine yourself walking along one of these Sikhs. The morning sun warms your shoulders, the air carries the scent of earth and herbs, and the path rises steadily into the hills. At intervals, you pause at shrines. One is a spring bubbling clear from stone. You offer coca leaves, letting them float upon the water. Another is a boulder carved long ago, smoothed by countless hands. You touch it gently, feeling the cool surface beneath your fingers. Further on, a cave opens in shadow, and you leave a tiny figurine within. Each step deepens a connection. Each gesture binds you not only to the land but to the empire itself. Stay close, because each Sikh line was tended by particular families or communities. The responsibility was shared, not imposed. Families knew which Huacas they must honor, which shrines they must maintain. This made devotion personal. Your household was tied to certain places, certain spirits, certain rituals. In this way, the empire's great spiritual map was upheld not by distant officials, but by families weaving their care into the land. Doesn't it soothe the heart to imagine devotion entrusted to everyday hands, to neighbors and kin, each carrying a small piece of the great design? And here's a detail both quiet and profound. The Sikh system was also a calendar. Rituals at shrines along different lines were scheduled at different times of year, guiding the agricultural and ceremonial rhythm of life. To follow the Sikhs was to walk through time itself, marking solstices, planting, harvests, and festivals. The land was a clock, a calendar, and a temple all at once. Imagine the comfort of living in a world where you could never be lost in time, for the very stones and springs around you reminded you of the season, of the cycle, of your place within it. Pause with me now and picture the Coricancha, the great temple of the sun at the heart of Cusco. From here the Sikhs radiated, as though light streaming from the sun itself. The temple walls, once covered in sheets of gold, reflected the sun's brilliance, filling the courtyard with warmth and glow. To stand there was to feel you were at the center not just a city, but a universe, the point from which order spread in all directions. And when priests looked outward, they did not see emptiness. They saw the lines, the shrines, the landscape alive with presence. Stay with me, because the Sikh system also reflected social order. Each line and each waka was tied to specific groups within the empire, ensuring that every family, every elu had a role. Caring for the sacred was not separate from daily life. It was a duty woven into identity. A farmer might tend maize fields, but he also tended a shrine. A woman might weave textiles, but she also prepared offerings for her Huacas along her family's Sikh. The empire was not only structured by law and labor, but by devotion, shared in quiet, steady gestures. And here's reassurance. Walking the Sikhs was not done in haste. Pilgrimages along these lines were slow, deliberate, filled with pauses for song, dance, and offering. Imagine yourself moving with a group, the sound of flutes rising, the beat of a drum steady as footsteps. The air is filled with the scent of burning herbs, the rustle of fabric, the murmur of prayer. Each shrine is approached with care, honored with small gestures. The journey itself is as important as the destination, for the walk is to weave, to connect. Doesn't it ease the mind to picture life as a series of slow, mindful steps, each one carrying meaning? Now, let's lower the lamp and picture the Sikhs at twilight. The sun has dipped below the peaks, but its glow lingers on the snow-capped mountains. Pilgrims rest near a waka, lighting small fires, sharing food, telling stories. Children listen as elders speak of ancestors who once walked these same lines, who left offerings in the same caves, who gaze at the same stars. The Sikh is not only a map of space and time, but a bridge between generations. Each step taken now echoes steps long past, each gesture a whisper continuity. Stay with me, because even today, echoes of the Sikh system linger in Andean communities. Shrines remain, offerings continue, rituals endure. Those centuries have passed. The land still holds memory, and the people still feel the threads of connection. The lines may no longer be mapped in official records, but they live in footsteps, in stories, in the hearts of those who still walk them. Isn't it common to think of traditions as rivers, sometimes hidden, sometimes quiet, but always flowing, always present beneath the surface? Let us pause once more at the Coricancha, as though standing quietly in its courtyard at night. The sky above is filled with stars, the Milky Way stretching like a river. From this center, invisible lines radiate outward into the darkness, connecting you to mountains, valleys, rivers, and shrines. You feel the threads pulling gently, not as chains but as bonds of belonging. You are not separate but part of design, a weaving that holds you steady. And as you breathe slowly, you sense that the empire itself is not stone or law alone. It is this network of reverence, these gentle connections binding all together. Stay close, Because in the next chapter we will wander into the empire's architectural wonders. Stone walls and temples shaped not only for strength but for beauty, harmony, and dialogue with the land. But carry this image with you now, a map drawn not on parchment but on the earth itself, lines of care stretching outward, shrines whispering with presence, and you, a pilgrim walking slowly, step by step, into belonging. Let us wander together now into the quiet grandeur of stone. For the Inca were not only keepers of roads and rituals, but also builders of places that seemed to breathe with the earth itself. Their architecture was never a clash against the mountains or defiance of the land. Instead, it was a gentle dialogue, a steady conversation between human hands and natural forms. When we look at the walls of Cusco or the fortress of Sacsayhuaman or the sacred city of Machu Picchu, we are not seeing stone conquered. We are seeing stone embraced, shaped with patience and reverence. And here's the soft twist to carry with you early. While empires elsewhere often raised towering structures to proclaim power, the Inca chose instead to craft buildings that blended into their surroundings, so harmonious that sometimes they seemed grown rather than built. Their strength lay not in domination of the landscape, but in cooperation with it. Isn't it soothing to think of a world where human ambition expressed itself not in monuments of separation, but in dwellings of unity, steady and enduring as the mountains they touched? Picture yourself now in the streets of Cusco. The ground beneath your feet is paved with stones fitted so closely together that no blade of grass slips between them. The walls rise, each stone different in shape and size, yet fitted with such precision that they interlock like puzzle pieces. Some stones are massive, towering higher than your head. Their surface is smooth yet not uniform. To run your hand along the wall is to feel both strength and softness, permanence and patience. There is no mortar here, no binding agent. The stones hold by their own design, as if each chose its place willingly. Stay with me, because these walls were not only strong but resilient. Earthquakes shook the Andes, yet the Inca structures absorbed the tremors. The irregular stones shifted slightly, then settled back into place, unbroken, unbowed. Centuries later, when colonial buildings toppled, the Inca foundations remained. Isn't it calming to imagine craftsmanship so thoughtful that it endures not only time but turmoil, remaining steady as a mountain through the centuries? And now, let us walk upward towards Sacsayhuaman, the fortress above Cusco, the head of the great puma-shaped city. Here the stones are vast, blocks so immense that even modern eyes wonder how they were moved. Some weigh as much as a dozen elephants, yet they rest against one another with a gentleness that defies their mass. The walls curve like waves, rising in terraces, their lines flowing with the hillside. Standing there, you do not feel dwarfed or oppressed. You feel accompanied, enfolded by strength that is also beauty. Stay close, because the Inca did not only build fortresses. They built temples that caught the light in ways that seemed almost miraculous. In the Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun, walls were once covered with sheets of gold, reflecting the first rays of dawn. Windows were cut with precision, aligning with solstices and equinoxes, so that on certain mornings, the sun's beam would pass directly through, illuminating the inner sanctum. The temple was not only stone, but time made visible, the cosmos inscribed in architecture. Doesn't it ease the spirit to think of buildings not as empty shelters, but as companions to the heavens, steady markers of the rhythm of the sky? Now let us step into the terraces carved into the mountainsides. To the Inca, agriculture was not separate from architecture. They shaped the slopes into steps, each terrace held by stone walls, creating fields where none seemed possible. The stones warmed in the sun, releasing heat into the soil by night, nurturing crops even in the thin mountain air. Water flowed through canals, guided with care, every drop honored. To walk among the terraces is to walk among living architecture, where stone, soil, water, and seed are bound together. Stay with me, because nowhere is this harmony more visible than in Machu Picchu, the city in the clouds. Nestled between peaks, it seems to emerge naturally from a ridge, its stones echoing the shapes of the mountains around it. Temples, terraces, and dwellings cling to the slopes, connected by narrow paths and stairways. The Temple of the Sun curves in a graceful arc, its windows align with the solstice sun. Nearby, the Indoatena stone, the hitching post of the sun, sits carved with angles that cast shadows marking the time of year. To stand here is to feel suspended between earth and sky, enfolded by both. And here is reassurance. The Inca did not carve the land recklessly. They adapted to it, respected it, listened to it. A boulder too large to move might be incorporated into a wall. A slope too steep might become a terrace. Rather than force, they practiced dialogue. Their architecture was not a scar upon a mountain, but a song sung with it. Stone and earth in duet. Doesn't it calm the heart to imagine such gentleness in creation, where even buildings feel like they belong, like they are welcome guests of the land? Pause with me now, and picture the sounds of an Inca building site. There are no wheels clattering, no beasts dragging heavy loads. Instead, voices rise in song, guiding the rhythm of labor. Groups of workers push stones with logs, levers, and ramps, coaxing them into place. When the stone settles, the singing pauses, and a quiet cheer rises, soft, joyful, shared. Work is not harsh but communal, each person contributing strength, each voice lifting the task. The wall rises not as a monument to one man, but as a chorus of many. Stay with me, because architecture was not only for temples and cities, but for the simplest of homes. A family's house might be a single-room structure of stone, roofed with thatch, a hearth at its center, llamas resting outside. These homes were modest, yet steady, warm, and welcoming. Within them, families wove, cooked, told stories, and slept under blankets. The great and the humble shared the same principles of construction: respect for stone, harmony with land, strength without arrogance. Isn't it soothing to know that the same care went into a family's hearth as into the emperor's temple? As night falls, imagine yourself sitting against an Inca wall. The stones are cool beneath your back, the air crisp, the stars emerging above. You run your fingers along the surface, tracing the edges of stones cut centuries ago. They fit so precisely, so patiently, that they feel alive, as though breathing quietly. Around you, silence deepens, broken only by the distant call of a night bird. You are steady, secure, held by the same walls that have held countless before you. Stay close, because in the next chapter we will leave the stones of the cities and step into the empire's agricultural genius more deeply. The terraces, canals, and granaries that made abundance possible in landscapes that seemed impossible. But carry this image with you now. Stones fitted like puzzle pieces, walls rising like waves, terraces stepping like ladders into the sky, and temples catching the first rays of dawn. Architecture not as conquest, but as companionship. Stone speaking softly with mountain. Buildings singing gently with land. Settle in with me now, as we leave the stone walls of cities behind and wander into the living fields of the Inca, where stone and soil worked hand in hand to sustain an empire. If the markets hum with abundance and the textiles glow with color, it was because of the quiet, ingenious systems that made farming in the Andes not only possible, but flourishing. Agriculture in the Inca world was more than labor. It was devotion, a rhythm between people and Pachamama, the Earth Mother. And here is a soft twist to carry with you early. Though the Andes seem harsh, steep mountains, thin air, shifting weather, the Inca turned this rugged land into gardens that climbed toward the sky. Where others might have seen only obstacles, they saw potential. The mountains became staircases of terraces, the rivers became networks of canals, and the sun itself became a partner in growth. Isn't it soothing to imagine such harmony, where challenges became companions, and the land itself responded with generosity? Picture the terraces first, those graceful steps cut into the mountainsides. From a distance, they look like ladders ascending into clouds, green with maize, potatoes, and quinoa. Each terrace is held by a stone wall, carefully fitted, warming in the sun by day and releasing its heat into the soil by night. This gentle trick kept crops alive even in thin, chilly air. Walk along one with me now. The stones at your side still hold the day's warmth. The soil beneath your sandals is rich and soft, and the air carries the scent of earth, fresh and grounding. Stay with me, because each terrace was more than a field. It was a marvel of engineering. Layers of gravel, sand, and topsoil allowed water to drain without eroding the slope. Channels carried streams downward, feeding one level after another. Farmers tended each step, guiding llamas up narrow paths, sowing seeds with careful hands. Potatoes flourished high in the cold, maize thrived lower down, while peppers and fruits grew in warmer valleys. In this way, the Inca created a vertical garden that mirrored the empire itself, diverse yet connected, every level feeding into the whole. And here's another gentle revelation. The Inca cultivated more than 70 types of crops, adapting them to countless microclimates. Potatoes alone came in hundreds of varieties, tiny, large, red, purple, golden, each suited to a different altitude or soil. Maize grew in valleys, its kernels fat and sweet, used not only for food but for brewing chicha, the beer of rituals and festivals. Quinoa, small and shining, thrived where little else could grow. To taste an Inca meal was to taste the ingenuity of adaptation, each grain carrying the wisdom of centuries. Pause with me now by a canal, the water rushing softly over stone. The Inca were masters of irrigation, carving channels from rivers and springs, guiding them with precision to fields far below. Some canals were simple ditches, others lined with stone, gleaming in sunlight as though they themselves were sacred. And indeed, they were sacred. Water was life, and guiding it was an act of devotion. Farmers sang as they opened channels, offering coca leaves before letting the water flow. Imagine the sound, the trickle, the murmur, the steady rush, like a lullaby of the land itself. Stay close, because abundance was not left to chance. The Inca built vast storehouses called calcas that lined the roads and hillsides. These structures, cool and dry, held maize, potatoes, dried meat, and textiles. They were state-managed, filled in times of plenty, open in times of need. When famine threatened, when crops failed, when armies marched, the storehouses sustained all. Picture one now. Rows of circular buildings on a slope, their thatched roofs neat, their walls strong. Inside, baskets overflow with grain. Jars are sealed with chicha. Bundles of cloth rest in piles. It is a vision of security, of foresight, of comfort. And here is reassurance. In this system, no one was forgotten. The state collected surplus not to hoard, but to redistribute. Communities contributed their share, and in return, they knew the empire would provide in hardship. Imagine the relief of knowing that hunger was not yours to face alone, that the granaries of the mountains stood ready to open, that your family was part of a circle of care. Doesn't it ease the heart to think of an empire where abundance was shared, where security was woven into stone and soil alike? Now, let us walk slowly through a harvest. The fields are golden with maize, the terraces heavy with potatoes, the air filled with laughter and song. Families work together, hands quick, baskets filling. Children chase one another between rows, carrying small loads, learning the rhythm of the work. When the harvest ends, the community gathers for a feast. Fires crackle, maize is roasted, chicha flows, songs rise into the night. Gratitude is offered to Pachamama, to the sun, to the mountains. The year has been generous, and the people respond with joy. Stay with me, because agriculture was not only about feeding bodies. It was about sustaining rituals, festivals, and offerings. Maize beer was poured to the gods, potatoes buried with the dead, quinoa placed on altars. Food was both nourishment and prayer, both daily meal and sacred gift. Imagine sitting at a low fire, sharing a bowl of quinoa soup, knowing that each spoonful carries not only warmth but meaning. Isn't it common to think of food as connection, as gratitude, as story? And now, picture a scientist's eye upon these fields. Even today, researchers marvel at Inca agricultural terraces, which created microclimates that allowed crops from different regions to grow side by side. At Moray, circular terraces descend like an amphitheater, each level slightly warmer or cooler, wetter or drier. Some believe this was an experimental garden, a place where the Inca tested how crops might thrive in different conditions. It is as though the empire built its own laboratory, a living classroom where Earth itself was teacher. Stay with me as twilight falls over the terraces. The sun dips low, shadows lengthen, and the fields quiet. Farmers walk home with llamas, carrying loads, children trailing behind. The canals glimmer with last light. The storehouses stand silent but full. The mountains watch in calm majesty. The air cools, the stars begin to emerge, and the fields rest as the people rest. The land and its keepers are in harmony. sharing the rhythm of work and stillness, abundance and gratitude. Stay close, because in the next chapter we will step into the world of Inca food and daily meals, tasting with imagination the simple yet rich dishes that nourish hearts and bodies. But carry this with you now. Terraces rising like steps to the sky, canals singing like rivers of silver, storehouses standing like guardians of plenty, and families gathered in fields, working with joy. Agriculture not as toil, but as devotion, weaving the empire together in abundance, security, and gratitude. Come closer now, as though you're drawing up your blanket by a low fire, for we are about to step into the kitchens of the Inca world, where stone, clay, and flame gave rise to flavors that sustain both body and spirit. Agriculture, with its terraces and canals, filled baskets and granaries. But it was in the quiet corners of homes and in the warmth of hearths that these harvests transformed into meals. If you let your mind drift gently, you may hear the crackle of firewood, the bubbling of a clay pot, the soft voices of families sharing their day. And here's a soft twist to carry with you. Though the empire was vast, stretching from high mountains to coastal plains, the meals of its people were rooted in simplicity. No great banquets with glittering tables, no endless variety of foreign luxuries. Instead, nourishment came from familiar staples: potatoes, maize, quinoa, prepared in countless ways, flavored with herbs, enriched with care. Isn't it calming to imagine such steadiness, where meals were predictable yet comforting, uniting the empire in a shared rhythm of taste? Let us begin with the potato, humble yet extraordinary. In the highlands, where cold nights might threaten crops, potatoes thrived. Families stored them fresh, boiled them into stews, or dried them into chuno, a form that could last for years. Picture a crisp night under a pale moon, potatoes spread across the ground, left to freeze. By day, the sun thawed them, and farmers pressed the water out with their feet. After repeating this process, the potatoes became light, dry, and durable, ready to be stored or carried by armies. Doesn't it soothe the mind to know that even harsh frost became a helper in the Inca kitchen, turning perishables into lasting abundance? Stay with me as we turn to maize, the golden crop of the valleys. Its kernels could be roasted as snacks, ground into flour, or boiled into porridge. From maize came chicha, the fermented beer that flowed at festivals, poured in rituals, and shared among friends. Imagine a jug of chicha being lifted, the froth spilling slightly as it is poured into a simple cup, passed hand to hand with laughter and warmth. The drink was not only refreshment, but companionship, a liquid bridge between everyday meals and sacred celebrations. Quinoa, too, deserves our gentle attention. Its tiny seeds glisten like pearls, rich in nutrition, boiled into soups mixed with herbs or served with meat. In times of fasting or ritual, quinoa carried both strength and reverence. Today it is known around the world, but long before, it was a staple in humble Inca kitchens, a thread that tied the highlands together. Pause for a moment and imagine its earthy scent rising from a steaming bowl, offered by a mother to her children at the end of the day. Now let us walk into an Inca home, built of stone with a thatched roof, its hearth glowing in the corner. A clay pot hangs above embers, bubbling with stew. Inside may be potatoes, maize, quinoa, peppers, and herbs. Perhaps a bit of llama meat or guinea pig. Both prized but used sparingly, for meat was a treat rather than a constant. The air is warm, filled with the aroma of cooking, the sound of voices weaving around it. Children crouch near the fire, their faces lit by its glow, while elders sip chicha and share stories. Doesn't it feel safe to imagine yourself seated there, a wooden bowl in hand, the steam brushing your face? Stay with me, because flavor came not from abundance of spices, but from ingenuity. Wild herbs such as wakate or muna added fragrance, while peppers gave heat and depth. Salt was gathered from mines or trade, carried carefully to kitchens where it was treasured. Food was seasoned with what the land offered, turning each simple dish into something whole. Imagine the sensation of biting into roasted maize with a sprinkle of salt, the kernels warm and crisp, the taste both grounding and satisfying. And here is another gentle revelation. Meals were not rushed. They were moments of gathering, of pause. Work might fill the day, but food brought people together. Farmers returned from fields, shepherds from slopes, weavers from looms. Around the hearth, the day softened into evening, and food became the center of warmth and conversation. Isn't it soothing to think of meals not as interruptions, but as anchors, holding the day steady with comfort and care? Step with me now into the world of festivals, where food took on its most joyful role. At Inti, the Festival of the Sun, maize beer flowed freely, roasted meats were shared, and dancers carried baskets of food as offerings. In smaller village feasts, communities brought what they could: grains, fruits, vegetables, and placed them together. A communal meal was cooked, eaten with laughter and music. Imagine a long line of pots steaming on fires, their aromas mingling in the air, while voices lifted in song and drums beat softly. Food in these moments was more than sustenance. It was gratitude embodied, a taste of the divine. Pause with me here, because food also honored the dead. Offerings of potatoes, maize, and chicha were left at shrines and graves. Mummies of ancestors were sometimes offered meals, as though they still lived and ate alongside their descendants. To share food was to share presence, to affirm that life and death were not sharply divided but flowing together. Picture a small bowl of quinoa porridge placed carefully at a shrine, steam curling into night air, a quiet act of remembrance. Doesn't it bring a gentle peace to imagine such continuity, where love reached across time to the simplest of offerings? Stay with me, for kitchens also adapted to the empire's vast geography. Along the coast, fish and seafood flavored meals, dried and carried inland. In the jungle regions, fruits added sweetness, unknown to highland farmers. Each region contributed, and yet meals retained their essence of simplicity. Imagine traders arriving at a market in Cusco, baskets of bananas, peppers, or dried fish at their sides. These were not luxuries of the few, but shared flavors that brought the empire's regions closer together. And here is comfort. Food was also a measure of care by the state. Through the vast storage system, even those who faced hardship could be fed. After a poor harvest, or when communities were struck by disaster, food was taken from storehouses and distributed. Meals continued. Fires still burned. Bowls were still filled. Imagine the relief of receiving a bundle of potatoes from the state stores, knowing your children would not go hungry. This was not charity, but a promise, woven into the fabric of empire. Let us slow down now and picture the tools of the Inca kitchen. Grinding stones for maize, clay pots blackened from years of use, wooden spoons smoothed by countless hands, baskets woven from reeds. Each item carried memory, passed from one generation to the next. To cook was to participate in lineage, to repeat gestures that mothers and fathers had made for centuries. Doesn't it soothe you to imagine the continuity of such objects, each carrying traces of warmth and care? Stay with me as night deepens. The hearth still glows, though the day's meal is finished. Bowls are cleaned, baskets are stacked. Children fall asleep to the faint crackle of embers. Outside, the mountains rise silent. The fields rest in moonlight. The canals murmur softly. Inside, the family breathes evenly, their bellies full, their hearts content. Food has done more than sustain. It has comforted, connected, and blessed. And now, let us turn gently toward the promise of what comes next. For, come closer now, as though you were leaning toward the glow of a candle. For in this chapter we turn to the threads that clothe the Inca world. Threads of wool, of cotton, of color, of story. If food sustained the body, textiles embraced it, warming against high mountain winds, adorning in celebration, carrying meaning in every dye and pattern. To understand the Inca is to understand their weaving, for in every tunic and every blanket lay the whispers of empire. And here is a soft twist, offered early. Though gold and silver dazzled outsiders, it was cloth, humble woven cloth, that the Inca prized most dearly. Gold could gleam, but it was textile that wrapped the newborn, clothed the ruler, offered tribute to the gods. Doesn't it calm you to think of wealth not as cold metal, but as softness against the skin, as colors spread across stone plazas, as warmth given by alpaca wool? Let us begin in the highlands, where alpacas and llamas grazed on steep slopes. Their wool was gathered with care, cleaned, spun into yarn, and dyed with the colors of nature. Alpaca wool was soft and warm, suitable for blankets and tunics. Llama wool, coarser, was used for ropes and sturdy cloth. Vicuña wool, rare and fine, was reserved for nobility and the Sapa Inca himself. Picture the animals grazing beneath a wide sky, their gentle hums carrying in the air, their coats shimmering like gift of the earth. Stay with me, for the process of weaving began long before thread met loom. Cotton was grown in the lowlands, spun into white or dyed fibers, traded upward into the highlands. Plants, minerals, and insects yielded dyes. Cochineal beetles produced deep crimson. Plants gave yellows and greens. Minerals offered blues and blacks. Imagine a weaver dipping yarn into a steaming pot, watching fibers drink in the color, lifting them into air where they glisten like wet jewels. The work was not rushed. It was meditative, each step a prayer of patience. Now we step into the home of a weaver, a woman seated on the ground before a backstrap loom. The loom is simple, stretched between a tree and her waist, yet it is powerful. Her hands move with steady rhythm, passing threads back and forth, creating patterns of diamonds, stripes, and steps. Each design holds meaning, symbols of land, of lineage, of the cosmos itself. Children watch, learning by eye and hand, their small fingers eager to imitate. Doesn't it soothe the spirit to imagine weaving not as solitary work, but as a rhythm shared between generations, each pattern carrying memory? And here is another gentle revelation. Textiles were language. A tunic could declare a person's rank, region, or role. Colors and patterns were not chosen lightly. They communicated identity. The Sapa Inca wore garments of such fine weaving and vivid dyes that they shone like sunlight. Soldiers wore uniforms that united them. Nobles donned designs that distinguished their clans, and farmers wrapped themselves in blankets marked with humble, familiar motifs. To wear cloth was to wear story, and the body became a canvas of belonging. Stay with me, because textiles also played roles in ceremony. At festivals, the Sapa Inca distributed fine garments to nobles, binding loyalty through gifts of cloth. In rituals, offerings of woven tunics and blankets were burned or buried, given to gods and ancestors as gifts of devotion. Imagine a garment, woven with weeks of care, laid upon a shrine, its colors bright against stone, its warmth offered back to the cosmos. Isn't it peaceful to think of clothing not as discarded fabric, but as an honor gift, carrying spirit even beyond use? Let us pause at the workshops of Cusco, where the finest weavers, called Aklakuna, the chosen women, worked under the empire's eye. They spun, dyed, and wove garments destined for rulers and gods. Their work was meticulous. Each thread placed with precision, each pattern perfected. The cloth that emerged was so fine it seemed like water, so vivid it glowed. These garments were treasures beyond gold. Their value measured not only in rarity, but in the devotion they embodied. Picture such a workshop. Looms stretching across a room. Women bent over their work. The air filled with the soft sound of threads sliding into place. And here's reassurance. Though the empire demanded tribute in cloth, weaving remained deeply personal. Every household wove. Every family carried the skill. Blankets warmed children. Cloaks shielded shepherds. Belts bound tunics. And hats shaded farmers in the sun. No one was excluded from the touch of cloth. And in each home, weaving connected labor with love. Isn't it soothing to imagine every family creating, every hand contributing to the fabric of the empire in both literal and symbolic ways? Stay close, for even in death, textiles accompanied the Inca. Mummies were wrapped in layers of woven cloth, sometimes so many layers that the bundle rose taller than the person had been in life. Textiles sheltered the departed, adorned them, carried them into eternity. To weave was to prepare not only for life, but for the journey beyond. Imagine a body wrapped with tenderness, the cloth patterned with symbols of mountains and rivers, a final blanket that whispered comfort across the threshold of time. And let us step gently now into markets, where textiles were displayed, folded neatly, their colors catching light. Farmers might trade potatoes for a cloak. Fishermen might carry home a blanket for their children. Herders might purchase belts or hats. Textiles move as currency, exchanged with respect. Their worth measured not only in practicality, but in meaning. Picture a stall piled with woven belts, red and black patterns glowing in sunlight, buyers leaning in to choose, sellers smiling with pride. Doesn't it calm you to think of wealth as fabric, something that warms, adorns, and connects? Pause with me as evening falls. A weaver sets aside her loom. The day's work folded carefully. The fire crackles. Children play nearby, and her hands rest after hours of patient motion. She touches the thread she has woven, feeling not only texture but the weight of tradition. Outside, the mountains loom softly, cloaked in shadow, as if the land itself wore a woven garment. The family gathers beneath blankets, their bodies warmed, their dreams clothed in the patterns of their people. Stay with me, because in the next chapter we will wander into the roads and bridges of the Inca, marveling at how paths of stone and rope carried people, goods, and messages across impossible landscapes. But carry this image with you now, a woman at her loom, her fingers dancing across threads, patterns emerging like quiet music, cloth growing steadily from patience and love, until it becomes both warmth and story, both garment and gift. Let us begin slowly, as though we are setting out at dawn, with the faintest pink light spilling across the high peaks. For now we walk into one of the most wondrous achievements of the Inca, their roads. Imagine them not as loud highways filled with haste, but as quiet veins stretching through mountains and valleys, carrying footsteps, voices, goods, and messages like blood carrying life through a body. The Capac Nan, the great road system, was more than stone. It was a thread weaving the empire into one fabric, binding the Andes from north to south. And here's a soft twist, offered early to guide your thoughts. The Inca built tens of thousands of kilometers of road, yet no one ever rode upon them. No horses' hooves struck their stones. These roads were made for feet, for llamas, for runners who carried messages like whispers across mountains. Isn't it soothing to imagine a world where distance was crossed by rhythm of step and breath, where the journey itself was a song, unhurried, steady, and deeply human? Picture with me a stretch of the Highland Road. Stones are laid with care, their surfaces flat and smooth, curving along the mountainside like a ribbon. On one side, cliffs drop into valleys where rivers gleam like silver threads. On the other, peaks rise sharp against the sky. The air is thin yet crisp, carrying the faint sound of wind brushing over stone. Along this path, travelers move slowly, steady, their shadows long in the early light. Stay close, because the roads were not only in mountains. They spanned deserts, where sand stretched endlessly, and the Inca laid causeways to cross them. They cut through valleys lush with maize, along coasts where the sea sighed, into jungles where humidity hung heavy. Each region offered its challenge, and each was met with ingenuity. Wooden causeways over marsh, carved steps into cliffs, suspension bridges of woven grass across roaring rivers. All these kept the rhythm of the roads unbroken. Now imagine walking toward one of those bridges. Ropes woven from grass twist into thick cables, stretching across a gorge where water rushes far below. The bridge sways gently, its surface woven from reeds, soft underfoot. A traveler steps carefully, hand brushing the rope rail, eyes fixed on the far side. Each step is steady, and soon they reach firm ground again. Isn't it calming to think of bridges not as barriers, but as bonds, swaying but secure, carrying lives across divides? Pause with me to consider the runners, called chaskis, who carried messages along the road. They were swift, trained, stationed at intervals in small lodges. One ran, carrying a quipu or message, and as breath faltered, another took up the thread, dashing forward without pause. In this way, news flew across the empire with astonishing speed, though always on human feet. Picture a runner cresting a hill, lungs full, eyes focused, handing a message to another who springs forward into the distance. The road hums with their footsteps, soft as drums in the stillness. Stay with me, because roads also carry community. Along them, families traveled to markets, pilgrims walked to shrines, soldiers marched in lines. Llamas bore loads of maize, potatoes, cloth, and salt, their hooves clicking against stone. Traders carried coastal shells to mountains, exchanged for wool or dried meat. Each step, each journey, wove connections between regions. Imagine passing by travelers on the road, each with their own bundle, their own song, yet all part of a shared network, meeting and parting with nods of recognition. And here's a gentle revelation. The roads were not empty stretches of stone, but were dotted with tambos, way stations that offered rest, food, and supplies. Travelers would pause, sip chicha, eat roasted maize, and continue. These stations were lifelines, maintained by the state, reminders that journeys were not endured alone but supported. Doesn't it soothe the heart to imagine walking a long path, knowing that warmth, rest, and kindness awaited every few kilometers? Now let us pause in Cusco, the navel of the empire, where all roads converged. From the sacred city, paths radiated outward like rays of sun, each one leading to valleys, coasts, jungles, and mountains. To walk outward was to walk into the body of the empire itself, to follow the veins that pulse with life. Imagine standing in the plaza, looking outward, and knowing that every direction led connection to kinship, to shared identity. Stay with me, because roads also carried rituals. Pilgrimages followed them, lines of dancers and singers winding along paths toward shrines. Offerings were borne on shoulders. Chants rose into thin air. Drums echoed off cliffs. The road became a sacred space itself, a processional line connecting people to gods. To walk upon it was to walk in reverence, each step a prayer, each journey an offering. Isn't it calming to picture a road as not only stone but as devotion, carrying the sacred in every footprint? Let us slow down now, to twilight on the road. Travelers have stopped at a tambo, llamas grazing nearby. Fires flicker, food is shared, and the day's fatigue softens into laughter and rest. The stars emerge vast above, the Milky Way glowing like a river of light. People sleep wrapped in blankets. Their dreams carry along the same paths their feet have walked. The road rests too, silent, awaiting tomorrow's footsteps. And here is reassurance. Though centuries have passed, some of these roads endure. Stones still lie in place. Bridges are still woven anew each year in certain valleys. Footsteps still echo where once the empire's lifeblood flowed. Imagine walking one now, your own steps joining those of countless before you, feeling the same wind, seeing the same peaks, sharing the same path. Doesn't it bring ease to know that memory can be walked, that history is beneath your feet? Steady as stone, stay close. Because in the next chapter we will step into messengers' quipus, those knotted cords that carried stories and numbers across the empire. But let this linger with you for now. The roads winding like ribbons through mountains, bridges swaying across gorges, runners passing messages like breath, families traveling to markets, pilgrims singing as they walk, and above all, the sense that the empire was not scattered but bound together, its heartbeat carried by footsteps along stone. Let us settle together now, as though by lamplight in a quiet room, for this chapter is about memory itself, how the Inca remembered, recorded, and carried knowledge without books, without writing, without ink on parchment. Their system was quipus, bundles of cords knotted in patterns that spoke volumes. To hold a quipu in your hands was to hold not just rope, but story, record, and guidance. And here's a soft twist to carry with you early. Though quipus were made only of cords and knots, they held as much power as entire libraries. They could count, recall, direct, and perhaps even tell stories. Isn't it soothing to imagine knowledge not as heavy tomes stacked on shelves, but as something soft and portable, carried in a pouch, passed from hand to hand with care? Picture a quipu now, a main cord, strong and steady, from which hang many smaller cords. Each cord is dyed a color, red, blue, yellow, brown, and along its length knots are tied. Some knots are simple, some elaborate, some close together, others spaced apart. To the untrained eye it may seem like random tangles, but to a keeper knowledge, called equipokamaic, these knots spoke with clarity. Numbers, records, accounts, all arranged in strands that move beneath fingers like beads of memory. Stay close, because quipus were first and foremost instruments of counting. They recorded harvests, how many bushels of maize, how many baskets of potatoes, how many llamas in a herd. They recorded tribute, what each community owed in cloth or labor. They recorded census, how many families, how many children, how many elders. A quipu could stretch across an empire in its meaning, compressing the lives of thousands into cords that one person could carry. Doesn't it calm you to imagine complexity reduced to knots, to feel that order could be tied gently into rope? Now let us sit with Quipokamaic, one of the trained readers and makers of quipus. He sits cross-legged, the quipu draped across his lap. His fingers move with practiced ease, sliding along cords, feeling knots, recalling meaning. His lips move silently as he interprets. This knot is 10. This is 1. This cord is potatoes. This one maize. Another quipu records soldiers in a garrison. Another the supplies in a storehouse. To him, the knots are alive, speaking softly with each touch. Isn't it peaceful to imagine knowledge stored not in pages, but in textures, in the feel of fiber beneath fingertips? And here is a general revelation. Some scholars believe quipus carried not only numbers, but also narrative, stories, genealogies, perhaps even myths. The arrangement of colors, the order of chords, the types of knots may have encoded more than quantities. Imagine if history itself was knotted into thread, if memory lived not in written lines, but in woven strands. Doesn't it soothe your imagination to think that stories might be told through the humblest of materials, waiting patiently to be touched and retold? Stay with me as we step into the rhythms of daily use. A tax collector visits a village, carrying his quipu. He notes how many baskets of maize are owed, how many llamas will be sent, how much cloth is to be woven. The villagers nod, and the quipu is updated with new knots, a new row of memory tied into its strands. Later, at a storehouse, another Quipucamaic checks supplies, knots them into his cords, and prepares to report. Messages are carried along roads by chaskies, bundles of quipus bouncing at their sides, ready to be handed to the next runner. All of this without ink, without paper, yet efficient and clear. Pause here, because quipus were also sacred. In some ceremonies, cord were offered knotted with prayers or promises. Families may have kept quipus as tokens of lineage, recording births, marriages, and deaths. A quipu could be both account book and family album, both ledger and blessing. Imagine a cord dyed red, tied with knots that mark generations, handed from parent to child, soft with years of touch. Doesn't it bring a sense of calm to picture memory passed not as brittle paper, but as soft fiber warmed by hands? And now, consider the colors. Each hue carried meaning. Red for soldiers or war, yellow for gold, green for maize, white for silver, black for time or death. A single quipu could gleam with rainbows of dyed cords, each strand a note in a larger chord of memory. To read one was to read a symphony of hues and knots together. Picture yourself holding such a quipu, threads of every color spilling through your fingers, each knot a whisper of information, the whole bundle humming with the weight of empire. Stay with me, for though quipus serve the state, they also serve the community. They help organize the mita, the system of labor that built roads, terraces, and temples. They ensured fairness, each family's contribution recorded, each village's share noted. Quipus prevented chaos, bringing order with softness. Doesn't it soothe the mind to imagine justice tied into cords, accountability resting not in harsh decrees, but in knots? And here is reassurance. Though the Inca had no alphabet as we know it, they were not without memory. Quipus kept knowledge alive across vast distances, allowing an empire to breathe and grow. Their system was different, but not lesser. It was simply shaped to their world, as unique as their terraces, their textiles, their roads. Knowledge is not bound to one form, and the Inca proved that wisdom could live in knots as surely as in ink. Now let us drift to twilight, when a Quipucamaic finishes his day's work. He gathers his cords, ties them neatly, and places them in a woven pouch. The fire crackles, casting shadows across the cords, making the knots gleam. He leans back, closes his eyes, and breathes deeply, knowing that tomorrow the cords will speak again. Outside, the stars gleam like knots in the night sky, each one a record of light, a cosmic quipu spread across eternity. Stay close, because in the next chapter we will wander into Inca religion, into the temples and rituals that bound earth and sky. But carry this image with you now, a bundle of cords knotted with care, colors glowing softly, knots whispering memory, and the thought that knowledge need not always be written. It can also be tied, touched, and carried close to heart. Draw the blanket a little closer, and let the light of an imagined lamp glow low beside you. For now we wander into the sanctuaries of the Inca, their temples, shrines, and sacred spaces. In this chapter, we move softly among stones that held meaning, walls that caught the sun, and plazas where footsteps and prayers merged into harmony. The empire was sustained by food, by roads, by memory, yet its heart lay reverence, a constant dialogue between people, mountain, sun, moon, stars, and earth. And here's a gentle twist to keep with you. While the temples of the Inca were grand in stone, their most sacred places were not built by hands at all, but by nature. A mountain peak, a spring, a great stone, these were wholly alive and honored. Isn't it soothing to think of a faith where the highest sanctuaries were not walled but open, where the world itself was temple, where divinity could be touched by simply lifting your eyes to the horizon? Let's begin in Cusco, the navel of the world, where the great temple of the sun, Coricancha, once gleamed. Its walls, built of finely cut stone, rose smooth and precise, their edges so perfectly fitted you could not slip a blade of grass between them. Upon these stones, the Inca laid sheets of gold that caught sunlight and poured it back, dazzling and warm. Inside, golden altars honored Inti, the sun god, the source of life. Imagine stepping into such a space at dawn, the first rays of sunlight striking walls that gleam with gold, the air filled with silence, broken only by a soft chant rising like breath. Stay close. Because Coricancha was not only a temple of the sun, but of the cosmos. Within its walls, shrines honored the moon, the stars, thunder, and the rainbow. Priests tended each, offering food, chicha, and flowers. The temple was a map of the heavens, reflected in stone and metal. Each god acknowledged, each presence woven into daily devotion. Doesn't it ease a heart to imagine a building that held not one deity, but the whole sky, where worship was not exclusion but inclusion? Now step with me into the Sikh system, lines of shrines radiating from Cusco into the valleys beyond. Each line led to Huacas, sacred places, sometimes temples, sometimes springs, caves, or stones. Together they formed a vast sacred map, linking the city to the land, the people to the cosmos. Imagine walking along one such line, from the gold of Coricancha outward into hills, stopping at a spring to pour chicha, at a rock to lay coca leaves, at a cave to whisper prayers. Each stop part of a larger journey, each gesture linking people to place. And here's another quiet revelation. Huacas to be anything that inspired awe, natural or human-made. A great boulder, a mountain peak, a twisted tree, a carved stone. To the Inca, divinity dwelled not only in grand temples, but in the ordinary landscape, seen with reverence. Doesn't it calm the spirit to think of holiness not hidden but everywhere, in a stream's murmur, in the curve of a hill, in the stillness of stone? Stay with me, for the empire's sacred geography extended beyond Cusco. On high mountain peaks, priests built small shrines where offerings were made. Ceremonies on these summits connected earth and sky, human and divine. Imagine standing atop a peak, the wind sharp, the world stretching endlessly below, the sky vast above. Here, offerings were left, prayers whispered, the mountain itself acknowledged as a living being. Isn't it peaceful to think of mountains not as obstacles, but as ancestors, guardians, and companions? Now let us enter a smaller village shrine, humble yet filled with presence. Its walls may be stone, its roof thatched, its altar simple. Inside, candles flicker, smoke from burning herbs curls upward, and the air is warm with devotion. Families gather, placing offerings of food and coca leaves, whispering prayers for good harvest, for health, for peace. There is no grandeur, yet the sacred is as real here as in Coricancha. The divine, after all, is not measured by size but by sincerity. Pause here, because the Inca temples also mark time. At solstices and equinoxes, sunlight struck walls and doorways in precise alignment, turning stone into calendars. Priests observed these patterns, announcing planting seasons, guiding festivals. The temple was both sacred and practical, bridging cosmos and field. Imagine a moment when sunlight, after a month of absence, slipped perfectly through a stone window, striking an altar in golden light. The people cheered, knowing the seasons had turned, that life would renew. Doesn't it soothe the mind to think of time not measured by clocks, but by light's gentle dance across stone? Stay with me as we wander to the Temple of the Moon, nestled near Cusco, where caves offered cool refuge and altars were carved in stone. Here, women may have gathered, prayers rising to the moon goddess Mama Killa, guardian of cycles, of tides, of time. The temple was soft and light, a place of reflection and balance to the bright grandeur of Coricancha. To honor sun and moon together was to honor balance, the rhythm of opposites joined. And here is reassurance. Though the empire stretched wide, temples connected all people. Whether by grand walls of Cusco, mountain shrines, or village altars, each space was a thread in the same tapestry. No one was excluded. Each could stand before a waka, offer a coca leaf, and feel part of the cosmos. Isn't it comforting to think of belonging woven not by distance or wealth, but by shared gestures of reverence? Now let us rest at twilight, outside a temple courtyard. The air is cooling, shadows lengthen, torches glow. Priests finish their chants, families step away, and silence falls. The temple stones hold the warmth of the day, their presence steady. Above, stars scatter across the dark, the Milky Way glowing like a river. People return to their homes, yet their hearts carry the temple with them, its rhythm echoing in memory. The sacred does not end when the walls are left behind. It lingers in the heart, in the breath, in the steady steps homeward. Stay close, because in the next chapter we will explore the rituals themselves, the ceremonies that filled temples and plazas with song, dance, and offerings. But hold this image for now: golden walls catching sunlight, mountain shrines touched by wind, caves glowing with candles, and the sense of the divine was never far away, always near in stone and sky, in the steady rhythm of devotion. Draw near again, as though listening to a gentle song drifting across night air. For this chapter is about the rituals of the Inca, their festivals, offerings, and ceremonies that bound them to gods, ancestors, and to one another. If the temples were spaces of reverence, it was through ritual that these spaces came alive, filled with music, dance, and devotion. Each festival was a weaving together of body and spirit, of earth and sky. And here is a gentle twist to hold close from the start. Though rituals were solemn, they were not heavy. They carried joy, color, laughter, and music. Devotion was not a burden, but a celebration. Isn't it soothing to imagine faith expressed not only in silence and prayer, but in dance and feasting, where sacredness and happiness shared the same space? Let us begin with the greatest festival of all, Inti Raymi, the Festival of the Sun. It took place at the winter solstice, when the days were shortest and the people turned toward Inti, asking for warmth, light, and renewal. In Cusco, the plaza filled with thousands, nobles, priests, farmers, dancers, musicians, children, all gathered as the sun's first light touched the stones. The Sapa Inca himself appeared, dressed in golden garments that shimmered like sunlight, a crown of feathers crowning his head. Imagine the hush of dawn, the air cool, the people waiting, and then, as sunlight struck, a great cheer rising, echoing off mountains. Stay close, because the rituals of Inti Raymi blended reverence with joy. Priests offered golden cups of chicha, pouring some to the earth, raising the rest of the sky. Dancers moved in circles, their feet beating softly on stone, their patterns echoing the stars. Flutes sang, drums pulsed, voices lifted in chants. Offerings of maize, coca leaves, and textiles were burned, their smoke rising like a bridge toward the sun. Isn't it calming to picture such harmony? Thousands of voices and gestures unified in gratitude and hope? Now, let us wander to smaller rituals of planting and harvest. When the first seeds were sown, families gathered in their fields. A priest might bless the soil, bury coca leaves, and sprinkle chicha. Hands press the seeds into earth, each gesture gentle, each prayer whispered. At harvest, gratitude flowed in reverse. Baskets of potatoes and maize were offered to Pachamama before families feasted. Picture yourself in a field, mountains standing quiet in the distance, the air rich with earth scent, and the rhythm of planting or reaping steady as breath. Doesn't it soothe you to think of daily work bound with reverence, of labor softened by prayer? Stay with me, for rituals also honor the dead. Ancestors were not absent but present. Their mummies sometimes brought out during festivals, clothed in fine garments, seated in places of honor. Offerings of food and drink were set before them, as though they still partook in the celebration. To the Inca, the dead had not vanished. They remained members of the family, their wisdom alive. Isn't it peaceful to imagine a festival where laughter, food, and music were shared not only among the living but with those long gone, memory woven directly into joy? And here is another gentle revelation. Rituals carried music as their constant companion. Drums thudded steady as heartbeats. Flutes curled like birdsong. Conch shells roared like ocean waves. Music was not entertainment, but prayer, a way to bridge human and divine. Imagine standing in a plaza, the beat of drums resonating in your chest, flutes winding in air, voices chanting in waves. The music lifts you, holds you, carries you deeper into reverence. Doesn't it ease the spirit to think of sound itself as sacred? Pause with me at the ritual of the rain, when drought threatened and people turned to the sky. Priests climbed hillsides, offering llamas, pouring chicha, singing for clouds to gather. Children carried flowers, scattering petals. Women brought bowls of water, pouring them upon the earth. Sometimes, after long prayers, rain truly came, falling in drops that shimmered in sunlight, welcome with cries of relief. Picture that moment. The scent of wet soil, the laughter of children dancing in puddles, the gratitude that filled every heart. Stay with me, because rituals were not only for the empire's center. In villages, small ceremonies marked each turning of time: births, marriages, deaths, sowing, harvest, moon cycles. These rituals, humble and tender, echoed the great festivals, binding empire and village alike in shared rhythms. Isn't it common to think that whether in Cusco or a remote valley, people lifted the same prayers, danced the same dances, carried the same gratitude in their hearts? And here is reassurance. Rituals were not only about gods, but about community. They reminded each person that they belonged, that they were part of something greater. Feasts followed ceremonies with roasted maize, potatoes, quinoa soups, and cups of chicha. Laughter rose. Songs carried on late into night. Devotion was balanced with joy, reverence with rest. Doesn't it soothe the soul to think of worship not as isolation, but as togetherness, where food and music wove people into harmony? Now let us rest at twilight, as a festival day comes to its close. The plaza quiets. Fires die down. Musicians set aside their instruments. The Sapa Inca returns to his palace, priests to their temples, families to their homes. Yet the warmth lingers. The rhythm of drums still hums faintly. The taste of food still clings to tongues. The sight of bright textiles still glows in memory. The rituals may end, but their peace carries on, like a gentle song that drifts into dreams. Stay close, because in the next chapter we will wander into the daily lives of Inca children, how they grew, learned, played, and dreamed. But carry this with you now. A dawn plaza filled with sunlight, voices chanting, offerings rising in smoke, laughter and music mingling with prayer, and the gentle truth that rituals were not burdens but blessings, not heavy but light, guiding life with harmony and joy. Let us settle a little deeper into the warmth of our imagined blanket, for now we turn to the youngest voices of the empire, the children of the Inca. Their days were simple yet purposeful, woven with play, with learning, and with preparation for the roles they would one day carry. To know a civilization, it is soothing to step into the soft footsteps of its children, to see through their bright eyes, to feel their laughter, their wonder, their steady growth in a world where even the mountains felt alive. Here is a gentle twist to carry near the beginning. Inca children were not raised only by their parents, but by the whole community. Each child belonged not just to a household, but to the Alu, the extended kin group that shared land, labor, and memory. Isn't it common to think of childhood as a shared embrace, where every neighbor looked after you, every elder taught you, and you grew not in isolation but in constant company? Picture a morning in a highland village. The air is cool, the sun just rising, casting soft gold upon the thatched roofs. A young boy runs barefoot across packed earth, chasing a spinning toy made of reeds. His sister balances a small pot of water, practicing the skills she will one day need. Around them, laughter echoes. Nearby, an elder sits, weaving, and pauses to show a curious child how patterns form. The day has barely begun, yet learning and play flow together, gentle as a stream that runs through the valley. Stay close, for Inca children learn by watching and doing. There were no written books, no formal classrooms as we know them, but life itself was a school. Girls learned weaving, cooking, tending crops. Boys practiced herding llamas, carrying water, helping in fields. Both learned respect for elders, care for the land, and reverence for the gods. Each small task was a lesson, Each responsibility a thread in the fabric of adulthood. Doesn't it bring ease to imagine knowledge passed not in rigid rules, but in the rhythm of daily life? Each day teaching softly what the next will require? And here is another revelation. Play was not separate from learning. When boys herded llamas, they played games of racing or throwing stones at targets. When girls practiced weaving, they turned threads into dolls and decorated their own clothing with bright designs. Children imitated the rituals they saw, staging little ceremonies with miniature offerings, giggling yet earnest. Through play, they learned the shape of the world, the flow of their community, the steps they would one day take for real. Pause here, for even in laughter there was guidance. Elders told stories in the evenings, their voices rising in rhythm with the crackle of fire. Myths of gods, tales of ancestors, fables of animals with lessons hidden in their movements. A fox might outwit a careless man. A hummingbird might bring joy where sorrow lingered. Each story was both delight and instruction, filling children's imaginations while shaping their understanding of life. Isn't it peaceful to think of stories not only as entertainment, but as lanterns lighting the path forward? Stay with me, because education shifted as children grew. At around 10, their tasks deepened. Boys might join their fathers in the fields or carry messages along the roads. Girls might take on heavier weaving or help in preparing chicha for festivals. Their shoulders carried more, yet their hearts grew steadier, for responsibility was never given all at once, but step by step in rhythm with their growth. Now let us wander into Cusco, where noble children lived differently. Sons of nobles were sometimes trained in special schools called yachahuasi, houses of learning. Here, priests and teachers taught them not only labor but a language of empire, Quechua, along with mathematics through quipus, astronomy, law, and the rituals of state. These boys were groomed for leadership, for service to the empire. Their days were filled with study, their nights with memorization, for the empire required their minds as much as their hands. Imagine them seated in stone halls, listening to wise teachers speak of stars, of history, of duties to come. Yet even here, play remained. In courtyards, noble children tossed balls made of leather, practiced mock battles, or sang together. Learning was rigorous, but laughter softened it, reminding all that childhood must hold joy. Isn't it reassuring to know that even in the heart of empire, where responsibilities loomed large, the sound of children's laughter still filled the air? And here is a tender truth. Girls of noble families sometimes entered the akwawasi, the houses of chosen women. There they were taught weaving of fine cloth, preparation of sacred food and drink, and rituals of devotion. Some became priestesses, others wives of nobles, still others attendants in ceremonies. Their days were structured, their tasks important, but they too carried memories of their childhood games, of laughter with friends, of soft mornings in the courtyard. Stay close, for across all ranks, childhood held both duty and delight. Children cared for guinea pigs, helped gather firewood, fetched water from streams. But they also played games of chance with stones, raced across fields, and told each other silly stories that made them laugh until dusk fell. Their world was structured, yet never joyless, for the Inca understood that the strength of tomorrow grew from the happiness of today. Now let us pause in twilight, when families gathered in their homes. The fire crackled. Guinea pigs rustled in the corners. The scent of roasting maize filled the air. Children curled against their parents, listening as elders spoke, their voices weaving memory into warmth. Sleep crept over them, dreams filled with mountains and rivers, with llamas and gods, with laughter and light. Isn't it soothing to imagine such nights, where safety and belonging wrapped around you like a blanket? And here is reassurance for us as listeners tonight. Inca children grew not in loneliness, but in circles of care. Every elder taught them. Every neighbor watched over them. Every festival reminded them they belonged. Their world was one of shared responsibility, of gentle preparation, of joy that balanced duty. To remember their lives is to remember that childhood need not be hurried, but can flow gently, like a stream through a valley, guiding without rushing, teaching without weight. Stay close, for in the next chapter we will wander into the world of Inca healers, their remedies, their herbs, and their tender arts of care. But hold this image now. A boy chasing a spinning toy across a village courtyard, a girl weaving patterns as bright as sunlight, laughter echoing in the highland air, and the comforting truth that every child was cherished, taught, and held by the arms of an entire community. Settle more deeply, as though the night air itself has become a blanket, for this chapter drifts us into the world of Inca healers. Their empire was vast. Their land stretched across valleys and mountains. But wherever people lived, they carried with them knowledge of herbs, of touch, of spirit. To the Inca, healing was not only about the body, it was about balance. Illness might arise from the stomach, the skin, or the lungs, but it might also flow from disrupted harmony with earth, with ancestors, with gods. To be healed was to be restored, to be placed gently back into rhythm with life. And here's a soft twist to hold near. The Inca healers, called Hampek, were not only doctors but also spiritual guide, herbalist, counselors, and ritual specialists. Their remedies could be as simple as a poultice of leaves, or as complex as a ceremony that stretched through the night. Isn't it soothing to think of healing as something more than treatment, something woven of body, spirit, and story? Imagine stepping into a highland hut where a healer works. The air is fragrant with herbs hung from the rafters, mint, sage, coca, and roots gathered from hillsides. A fire glows low, its warm steady, its smoke curling upward. A patient sits on a woven mat, and the healer kneels beside them, speaking softly, listening not only to words but a breath, to posture, to the unspoken signals of pain. Healing begins not with herbs, but with listening. Stay close, because plants were the Inca's great companions in healing. Coca leaves, sacred and versatile, were chewed to ease hunger and fatigue, brewed into teas for stomach troubles, and used ritually to read the state of the patient's spirit. Quinoa, not only food, became a source of strength in healing diets. The bark of certain trees, like cinchona, eased fevers, later recognized beyond the Andes as the source of quinine. Isn't it common to think of mountains and forests not only as scenery, but as pharmacies, each leaf and root a gift waiting to soothe? Now pause with me to picture a healer preparing remedies. Leaves are ground with stones, mixed with warm water into poultices. Roots are boiled into teas, their steam rising with a comforting scent. A paste is applied to a wound, covered with woven cloth. A bitter liquid is sipped, grimace at first, but then felt as warmth in the chest. Healing is tactile, sensory. Smell, taste, touch, all engaged. Doesn't it feel reassuring to imagine care as something so close, so tangible, carried in hands and breath? And here is another gentle revelation. Healing often included ritual. Illness was sometimes seen as imbalance with ancestors or gods. A healer might offer coca leaves to Pachamama or sprinkle chicha upon the earth. They might pass an egg or a guinea pig across a patient's body, drawing out what was harmful. These acts were not harsh but tender, intended to realign, to restore. Imagine lying still while a healer hums softly, a guinea pig rustling at your side, herbs placed at your feet, smoke rising in curls. The world feels quiet, attentive, safe. Stay with me, for healers also use touch. Massage ease weary muscles after long journeys on mountain roads. Pressure on temples soothe headaches. Hands press the back, calm the breath. Sometimes, simply holding a hand was part of the cure. To be touched with care was itself medicine, reminding the patient that they were not alone. Isn't it peaceful to think of healing as not only herbs but human connection, hands steady and kind? Now, let us wander into the healing of the mind. The Inca believed sorrow, fear, or envy could cause sickness. Healers spoke gently, offering counsel, telling stories, reminding patients of their place in the community and the cosmos. A ritual might be performed to lift sadness, to release fear, to restore joy. Picture yourself seated by a fire, a healer telling a myth of the condor, the bird who soars high and carries prayers to the sky. Their voice calms you, their words ease your mind, and in the stillness, your spirit feels lighter. Stay close, because healing was not only for individuals, but for communities. In times of epidemic, ceremonies were held for entire villages, offerings made, prayers spoken, fires lit through the night. Healing, like everything else in the Inca world, was shared. A sickness that touched one was felt by all, and so the cure was sought together. Isn't it comforting to know that care was never isolated, but woven into the whole fabric of community? Pause here with a special image. Children gathering herbs with their elders, little hands plucking leaves, listening as elders explain each plant's gifts. A child learns which root eases fever, which flower calms pain, which leaf lifts the spirit. These lessons are not hurried but whispered slowly over seasons, so that when a child is grown, they will know how to care for others. Isn't it soothing to picture knowledge passed not in books, but in patient steps through meadows and hillsides? And here is reassurance. While the Inca had no written medical texts, their healing knowledge was vast, sustained through memory and practice. They observed, adapted, remembered. Remedies were tested in the rhythms of daily life, refined across generations. This was wisdom carried in hearts, not paper, and perhaps that made it even more resilient, for it lived in voices, in hands, in every village that shared it. Now let us drift into twilight, where a healing ceremony unfolds by candlelight. A patient lies on a woven mat, herbs steaming in bowls nearby. The healer chants softly, a rhythm that blends with the crackle of fire. A cup of warm tea is pressed into the patient's hands, bitter yet calming. The healer offers coca leaves of the earth, asks for balance, for renewal. Slowly, the patient's breathing eases, their body loosens, their eyes close. Healing is not sudden, but gentle, unfolding like nightfall. Stay close, because in the next chapter we will step into the Empire's rituals of death and remembrance, where healing extended even to grief. But hold this for now. The healer's hut fragrant with herbs, the warmth of touch steady, the balance of ritual restoring harmony, and the gentle truth that healing is not only medicine, but presence, patience, and the whisper of care. Let us settle more deeply now, as though the night itself has drawn closer, for this chapter carries us into the Inca's understanding of death. Do not worry. It is not heavy, not frightening, not harsh. To the Inca, death was not an ending but a passage, a soft step from one realm to another. The spirit lingered, the ancestors remained, and life was threaded with their presence. If you breathe slowly, you may feel how this perspective can soothe the heart, to imagine that those we love are never lost, only transformed into guardians, companions, and voices carried in memory. And here's a gentle twist, offered early to keep your curiosity awake, without stirring anxiety. When the Inca honored their dead, they sometimes brought their mummies into the living world. Ancestors sat dressed in fine clothing, placed in plazas, consulted as though alive. Isn't it comforting, in a way, to think of ancestors not hidden but present, still part of celebrations, still part of decisions, still seated in the circle of community? Picture a highland village after the passing of an elder. The family gathers in their stone-walled home, the fire burning low. Neighbors come with food, maize and potatoes, coca leaves and chicha, to ease the family's grief. There is sadness, yes, but also tenderness. The body is prepared with care, wrapped in textiles woven lovingly by daughters and granddaughters. Prayers are spoken, offerings placed, and the journey of the soul is guided with rituals as steady as the rising of the sun. Stay close, for the Inca believed the soul traveled to a land beyond, guided by the gods. If a person had lived well, in balance, in generosity, they would rest in warmth, with fertile fields, with abundance. If not, their afterlife might be harsher, colder, but always there was hope, for rituals performed by the living could ease the journey, could bring balance where life had faltered. Doesn't it soothe you to think of love continuing even after death, of prayers and offerings carrying comfort across realms? And here is another tender image. Noble families sometimes kept the bodies of their ancestors mummified, seated in chambers, brought out for festivals. These ancestors were not eerie figures, but cherished presences, dressed in bright garments, given food and drink, consulted for advice. Imagine a plaza during a great festival. Music playing, people dancing, priests chanting, and among the living, ancestors seated in honor, their presence bridging past and present. Isn't it calming to picture a world where memory is not silent but visible, woven directly into daily life? Pause with me, because the practice of mummification was itself an act of reverence. Bodies were carefully prepared, wrapped in textiles, seated in positions of rest, surrounded by offerings. They were placed in caves or tombs, high places where earth and sky touched. Sometimes entire lineages were preserved together. Families reunited even in death. Picture the quiet of such a cave, woven bundles resting. The scent of earth cool and steady, the silence deep yet not frightening. For here lay guardians, not forgotten souls. Stay with me, for rituals of remembrance extended through the year. Families visited the resting places of their ancestors, bringing food, coca, chicha. They spoke aloud, telling their news, asking for guidance. Death did not sever conversation. It softened it, turned it into a dialogue between realms. Isn't it peaceful to think of speaking to those we miss and knowing they still listen, that the thread of love never breaks? Now, let us wander into Cusco, where the mummies of former rulers were treated as lords still. They had attendants, lands, even herds of llamas assigned to their care. Their voices were heard through priests and keepers, their presence felt in decisions. In festivals, they were carried through the streets, honored with offerings. The empire itself was built on continuity, where rulers past remained active, their memory not fading, but shaping the present. Doesn't it calm the mind to imagine leadership as a lineage that never fully leaves, always guiding? And here's reassurance. Children learned early that ancestors would be respected, not feared. Stories were told of their wisdom, their generosity, their role in shaping the land. By hearing these stories, children felt their lives connected to those who came before, their steps following in steady footprints. To belong was not just to the present moment, but to a chain stretching backward and forward, held together by memory. Stay close, for rituals of death also honor the natural world. Pachamama, the earth, was thanked for receiving the body, and Inti, the sun, was asked to guide the spirit. The cycle of seasons itself became a metaphor. As crops died and returned to seed, so too did life pass and renew. Picture a field after harvest, bare and quiet, yet holding the promise of green to come. The people saw death in the same way, not as absence, but as preparation for renewal. Now let us rest at twilight beside a small village ceremony of remembrance. Families gathered by a hillside tomb, placing flowers, pouring a little chicha on the earth. Children run and play nearby, their laughter lightening the evening. Elders speak prayers, the words drifting into the cool air. The fire glows, casting steady light on faces both solemn and serene. When the prayers end, food is shared, songs are sung, and the night closes not in sorrow but in calm. And here is a gentle promise fulfilled. The twist we began with, that ancestors were not hidden but present, finds its rest in the idea that love and memory are never buried. To the Inca, ancestors were part of the living world, honored, cherished, and carried forward. Isn't it soothing to carry that thought into our own night, that those we love remain with us, their presence quiet yet unbroken? Stay close. For in the next chapter we will step into the Empire's final days, the arrival of strangers from across the sea, and the changes they brought. But hold this image now, a family gathered by firelight, speaking prayers, ancestors, a plaza alive with music where mummies in honor, and the comforting truth that to the Inca, death was not an end but continuation, a bridge between realms walked with love. Breathe a little slower now, and imagine the steady hush of wind across the Andes. For in this chapter, we wander into the twilight of the Inca Empire, a time when strangers appeared from beyond the horizon, their presence unsettling, their ways unfamiliar. Do not worry. We will move gently, without harshness, without sharp edges. This is not a tale of violence, but of change, of encounters, of the fragile balance between continuity and disruption. It is a moment when the old rhythm met a new, unexpected one, and the echoes are still felt in quiet ways. Here is a soft twist that carries us forward. The Inca did not at first see these strangers as conquerors. They appeared almost as curiosities, figures dressed in unfamiliar cloth, riding animals no one had seen before, horses. Imagine the wonder of those first glimpses. The Inca, masters of roads and mountains, had never known such creatures, tall and swift. At first, the strangers were watched with curiosity, as one might watch travelers passing through. Isn't it calming, in a way, to realize that even moments of great change can begin with simple wonder? Picture a morning in the valleys near Camarca. The sky is pale blue, the mountains steady as ever, and villagers go about their routines. tending llamas, cooking maize, weaving cloth. Suddenly, riders appear, their horses' hooves striking stone roads with sounds never heard before. Metal glints in the sun, and the villagers pause, watching. There is silence, not fear yet, but curiosity. Who are these travelers? From where have they come? The world feels the same, yet something has shifted. Stay close, for the Inca were already unsettled within. A civil war had recently torn the empire, as brothers Atahualpa and Huáscar struggled for power. The land was still healing, loyalties frayed, families divided. Into this moment of uncertainty stepped the newcomers, whose presence seemed at first small compared to the vastness of the Andes. Isn't it striking to think of an empire of millions pausing before a handful of strangers, not yet realizing how much would change? Now, let us walk into the meeting of Atahualpa and Francisco Pizarro at Cajamarca. The plaza was wide, the air dry, the sun casting long shadows. Atahualpa came with dignity, carried in a litter, surrounded by nobles, his garments gleaming with gold and feathers. He expected to meet men who would show respect, perhaps pay tribute, as other peoples had done before the Inca. Instead, he was met with words of God he did not know, a book he could not read, and demands that puzzled him. Imagine the quiet tension in that square, the stillness before the air shifted. And here is reassurance. Even as we recall this moment, we do so gently. The clash that followed was sudden, but we will not dwell on its harshness. Instead, let us think of it as a turning point, a moment when two worlds touched, neither fully understanding the other. Isn't it calming, in reflection, to see history not only as conflict, but as encounter, as the meeting of different ways of seeing the world? Stay with me, for the Spanish brought with them not only steel and horses, but diseases unknown to the Andes. Illness spread quietly, invisibly, soft as breath yet devastating. Villages that had once echoed with laughter grew quiet. Families mourned and the empire's strength weakened. Imagine the sorrow of those moments, yet also the resilience. The way survivors carried on, planting, weaving, praying, holding to life. Even in twilight, the human spirit endures, steady as stone. Now let us drift into Cusco, the heart of the empire, as the newcomers entered its plazas. The golden walls of Coricancha gleamed. The temple stood strong, the streets still filled with life. The strangers gazed in awe, for they had never seen such precision, such order, such grandeur. Even in conquest, there was admiration, whispers of wonder at what the Inca had built. Isn't it soothing to imagine that even those who disrupted the empire could not help but marvel at its beauty? Pause with me, because change did not come all at once. For years, the rhythms of Inca life continued. Farmers still planted maize, weavers still worked their looms, festivals still honored Inti and Pachamama. Children still played in courtyards, elders still told stories by firelight. The empire had shifted, yes, but its spirit lingered, woven into every gesture, every tradition. Doesn't it bring comfort to know that even in times of upheaval, the quiet constancy of daily life carries on? And here is another gentle twist. Resistance did not vanish. In valleys and highlands, Inca loyalists held to their traditions, some rising in quiet defiance, others preserving rituals in secret. The empire's last ruler, Tupac Amaru, carried the legacy forward. Even as new rulers claimed the land, though power shifted, memory endured. Isn't it peaceful to think of history not as an ending but as a thread, sometimes hidden, sometimes visible, always continuing? Stay close, for twilight is not only loss but transformation. Inca traditions blended with those of the newcomers, creating new forms of worship, new rhythms of life. Catholic saints and Andean gods stood side by side. Festivals wove together old and new, and the people adapted, carrying their ancestors' wisdom forward. Imagine a village where the church bells ring, yet offerings of coca leaves are still placed beneath ancient stones. The old world and the new one walk together, neither fully erased. Now, let us rest at dusk in a mountain village during this time of change. Families gather around the fire, as they always have, the scent of roasting potatoes filling the air. A child asks about the strangers. An elder answers softly, telling not of fear but of resilience. We are still here. The elder says, We still walk the mountains, we still plant the fields, we still honor the sun. The child nods, reassured, sleep overtaking them as the fire crackles. Isn't it soothing to imagine continuity even in change? The rhythm of life holding steady beneath shifting skies? And here's a promise fulfilled. The twilight of the Inca was not disappearance but transformation. The empire, as a political power, faded, but its people, its culture, its wisdom remained. Today, Quechua is still spoken, rituals still performed, terraces still farmed. The Inca may no longer rule from Cusco, but their spirit flows through valleys and peaks, alive as ever. Doesn't it bring peace to think that nothing beautiful is ever truly lost, only carried forward in new forms? Stay close, for in the next chapter we will wander into the world of legacy, how the Inca's achievements in roads, agriculture, and culture endured, shaping lives long after their empire's twilight. But hold this now. Riders entering valleys, villagers pausing with curiosity, golden temples gleaming in Cusco, and a comforting truth that even in twilight, the light of memory never fades. Settle again beneath the calm of night. For this chapter is about legacy, the quiet endurance of the Inca, their wisdom carried forward not in palaces or armies, but in terraces, languages, rituals, and memory. Empires may fade, rulers may pass, but what endures are the small, steady rhythms of daily life, the practices so woven into the land that they outlast centuries. To speak of the Inca today is not to speak of ruins only, but of living traditions that hum softly through Andean valleys. And here is a gentle twist to begin with. The Inca may no longer rule from Cusco, yet their presence is all around, alive in language, in food, in music, in the very stones of villages. Isn't it soothing to think of legacy not as something buried in history books, but as something you can still hear in a song, taste in a potato, or see in a hillside terrace catching the morning sun? Picture a farmer today in the sacred valley. He steps out at dawn, the chill of mountain air on his face, and walks the terraces built centuries ago. Stones set by Inca hands still hold the soil, still catch the rain, still allow maize and quinoa to grow. He plants seeds just as his ancestors did, speaking Quechua words of thanks to Pachamama. As the sun rises, he smiles, knowing that the work of his day is the same work that has fed generations. Doesn't it calm the spirit to realize that such continuity stretches across time, unbroken? Stay close, for language itself is one of the strongest legacies. Quechua, the language of the Inca, is still spoken by millions across Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, and beyond. When a grandmother soothes her grandchild with a lullaby in Quechua, when farmers trade in village markets using its words, when prayers rise in Quechua syllables, the empire whispers through the present. The words may be soft, but they are resilient, as enduring as stone. Isn't it comforting to imagine a language carrying memory through centuries, alive on every breath? Now, let us wander to music. The panpipes, the quina flute, the drums, all instruments the Inca knew, still fill the air in Andean villages. During festivals, melodies echo through plazas. Rhythms carry dancers in circles. Songs lift into mountain skies. The notes may mingle with newer instruments, yet the heart remains Inca. Imagine sitting in a plaza at dusk, hearing flutes curl like bird song, drums pulse steady as heartbeat, voices weave together. Music, like memory, continues without end. Pause here, for food too carries legacy. Potatoes, cultivated by the Inca in countless varieties, still feed the Andes and the world. Quinoa, once a sacred grain, now nourishes kitchens far beyond the mountains. Maize, roasted, boiled, brewed into chicha, remain central to meals and celebrations. Picture a family gathered around a hearth, steam rising from a pot of potato stew, laughter echoing, the flavors unchanged from centuries past. Isn't it soothing to think that something as simple as a meal is also an unbroken thread of history? Stay with me, because architecture too whispers of the Inca. Walk through Cusco, and you will see Inca stone foundations beneath colonial buildings, their precision still unmatched. Visit Machu Picchu, and you will find terraces stepping down like green stairways, temples aligned with the sun, walls that fit together as though grown, not carved. Even in ruins, there is no sense of abandonment, but of endurance. Stones hold memory, patient and eternal. Doesn't it calm the heart to know that the work of hands can last so long, becoming part of the mountains themselves? And here's another gentle revelation. The Incas' roads remain. Some are paved with stone, others now only faint paths, yet they still guide travelers and villagers. Pilgrims walk them during festivals, llamas tread them carrying burdens, hikers trace them to connect valleys. The empire's network, once stretched across thousands of miles, is not forgotten but still in use, still binding communities together. Isn't it peaceful to imagine footsteps today echoing those of centuries ago, the road itself a bridge of time? Now, let us drift into festivals. Inti Raymi, the Festival of the Sun, is still celebrated in Cusco each June. Thousands gather to honor Inti as the Inca once did. Dancers in bright textiles move in circles. Priests chant, offerings are made. The sun is greeted with reverence. Though centuries have passed, the essence remains, a celebration of light, a renewal of connection to the cosmos. Imagine standing in that plaza, golden sunlight spilling across stone, voices chanting together. The past and present fold into one. Stay close, for healing traditions endure as well. Healers in Andean villages still gather herbs, still brew teas, still offer coca leaves in ceremony. The wisdom of plants, passed from elder to child, remains alive. A cup of warm herbal tea, given for stomach pain, carries not only remedy but heritage. Isn't it common to think of knowledge so resilient, surviving every storm, carried in gentle hands from one generation to the next? Pause with me in the quiet presence of Pachamama. To the Inca, she was Mother Earth, and today she is still honored. Farmers bury coca leaves before planting. Families sprinkle chicha on the ground before drinking. Travelers place stones on cairns to ask for safe journeys. These acts, small and steady, are whispers of gratitude, soft echoes of ancient reverence. Doesn't it soothe the heart to know that the earth is still honored as living, still cherished as mother? And here is reassurance. Though conquest reshaped the Andes, the Inca spirit was never extinguished. It adapted, blended, transformed, but always endured. In Catholic festivals, Andean dances persist. In village markets, Quechua words prevail. In terrace fields, potatoes still flourish. Legacy is not fragile. It is woven deep, like roots beneath stone. Now let us rest at twilight on a hillside above Cusco. The city lies below, its streets lit with lamps, its plazas alive with laughter. Yet in the stone foundations of its buildings, the Inca endure. In the rhythm of drums from a distant festival, they endure. In the scent of roasted maize drifting through the air, they endure. The empire may no longer rule, but its legacy hums quietly, as steady as the mountains that surround it. And here's a gentle promise fulfilled. The twist we began with, that the Inca are still all around us, finds its truth in every breath of Quechua, every bite of potato, every step on a stone road. Isn't it calming to know that nothing is ever wholly lost, that what is cherished finds ways to endure? Stay close. For in the next chapter we will step into reflections, how the Inca story speaks to us today, what it whispers about resilience, about belonging, about harmony with earth. But hold this now. A farmer tending terraces at dawn, flutes echoing through valleys, children learning Quechua songs, and the comforting truth that legacy is not past but present, alive in every rhythm of the Andes. Settle back into the hush of the evening, for this chapter is about reflection. We have walked through valleys, wandered along terraces, stepped into temples, listened to festivals, and sat beside fires. Now, softly we pause to ask, what does the Inca story whisper to us here and now? What threads from their world continue to guide, to soothe, to inspire? In answering, we do not look for rigid lessons, but for gentle echoes, like the sound of distant flute carried on mountain air. Here is the soft twist to carry with you. Though the Inca Empire as a political power faded, the wisdom of its people speaks across time, not as something foreign, but as something deeply human, patterns of care, of resilience, of belonging that can still steady us today. Isn't it calming to imagine history not as a museum behind glass, but as a quiet companion walking alongside us, whispering reassurance into our lives? Picture again the Inca's terraces, stones stacked with patience, soil carried by hand, slopes reshaped into steps of abundance. Those terraces still hold, centuries later, feeding families, resisting erosion, catching rain. They whisper to us of resilience, that what is carefully built endures, that patient work outlasts storms. Isn't it soothing to imagine our own lives as terraces, each act to carry another stone, each kindness another seed, each day's labor another step towards steadiness? Stay close, for the Inca also teach balance. Their world was woven of dualities, sun and moon, sky and earth, male and female, life and death. Balance was not opposition but complement, two forces leaning into one another. In their rituals, in their stories, in their planting cycles, this rhythm of balance guided them. Isn't it peaceful to think that our own lives, too, may find calm not by eliminating opposites, but by letting them dance together? And here is another reflection. Belonging. To the Inca, no one stood alone. Each person belonged to their elu, their kin group, their land, their ancestors. Work was shared, harvest was shared, festivals were shared. Even the dead remained part of the community, seated in plazas, honored with food and laughter. Isn't it comforting to think of belonging as not fragile but woven deep, that to live is always to be part of a larger whole? Pause with me, because their reverence to the earth also carries wisdom. Pachamama was not a concept, but a living being, honored with every planting, every sip of chicha, every step on the road. The Incan knew the land was not theirs to exploit, but theirs to tend, to care for, to thank. Imagine sprinkling a few drops of drink upon the ground before raising the cup to your lips, a simple act of gratitude. Isn't it calming to imagine daily life filled with such small, steady gestures of reverence? Stay with me, for the Inca also remind us of memory. Without writing in books, they carried knowledge in stories and songs, in the knotted chords of quipus, in the rhythm of footsteps on roads. Memory lived in voices, in hands, in shared rituals. Their story tells us that memory is not only something we record, but something we carry, repeat, and embody. Isn't it soothing to think that every story told tonight, every gesture repeated with love, is a form of memory alive? Now, let us wander into the idea of endurance. The Inca faced twilight, their empire fading, strangers arriving, their world shifting. Yet their culture endured, in food, in language, in rituals, in music, even in hardship. Life found ways to adapt, to persist, to sing. This endurance whispers to us. Even when circumstances change, even when the world feels uncertain, our essence can endure. Isn't it comforting to think of resilience not as strength alone, but as quiet persistence, soft as roots holding a hillside? And here is another gentle lesson. Joy as sacred. The Inca's festivals were filled with reverence, but also with music, dance, feasting, and laughter. To honor the sun was also to dance in its warmth. To thank the earth was also to share a meal. Their story reminds us that joy is not separate from sacredness, but part of it. Isn't it peaceful to imagine our own joys, small, daily, ordinary, as offerings, as rituals of gratitude? Pause again and picture the stars as the Inca saw them. The Milky Way arched above, mirrored by rivers below. Constellations shaped not only as stars, but dark spaces between them. Patterns of llamas, foxes, birds traced in the sky. The universe was not distant, but intimate, a mirror of Earth. Isn't it calming to imagine the night sky not as cold and far away, but as a reflection of our own world, close and connected? Stay close, because reflection also brings reassurance. The Inca story is not only about greatness or empire, but about daily life. Children playing with reed toys, women weaving cloth, men tending llamas, elders telling stories. These small details endure, reminding us that history is not built only of rulers and wars, but of everyday gestures, soft and steady. Isn't it soothing to know that our own daily lives, too, are part of history's tapestry? That what seems small today may be remembered as the essence of an age. Now let us rest at twilight in the Andes, imagining ourselves seated beside a fire, listening as an elder speaks. They tell of terraces, of balance, of Pachamama, of ancestors. Their words do not command, but soothe, reminding us of our place in the circle of life. The fire crackles, stars rise, the air cools, and in this stillness, the story of the Inca becomes not something distant, but something close, whispering gently to our own hearts. And here's a promise fulfilled. The twist we began with, that the Inca's wisdom is deeply human, not remote. finds its truth in every reflection. Their terraces speak of resilience, their rituals of balance, their elu of belonging, their reverence of gratitude, their endurance of persistence, their festivals of joy. Isn't it calming to carry these whispers with us, as though we too are part of that unbroken chain? Stay close, for in the final chapter we will draw these threads together, letting the Inca story taper into stillness, into gratitude, into sleep. But hold this now. Terraces lit by dawn, stars mirrored in rivers, families gathered by firelight, and the gentle truth that history is not only past, but present, a companion walking quietly with us, step by steady step. The night has deepened, and so too is our journey. We have wandered through mountains and valleys, terraces and temples, roads and rituals, until now we find ourselves at the quiet edge of the story. This is a place of gentle endings, where memory folds into stillness, and history becomes not something outside of us, but something carried within. Let us rest here together, in the final chapter, where the Inca Empire becomes not only a story of long ago, but a lullaby for tonight. And here is the soft twist that guides its closing. Endings are never truly endings. Just as the sun sets only to rise again, so too the story of the Inca does not end with conquest or ruin, but continues in whispers in daily life, in quiet traditions that endure. Isn't it comforting to know that the close of one tale is always the beginning of another? That continuity itself is the truest legacy? Picture yourself in the Andes, high above the clouds. The mountains cradle you, their slopes softened by moonlight, their ridges quiet under stars. The air is thin and cool, carrying the scent of earth and stone. You sit wrapped in a blanket, the fabric woven with patterns passed down for generations, threads dyed with colors of plants and minerals gathered from the hills. Around you, silence settles like a friend, steady and calm. In that silence, the Inca story hums, not loud, not commanding, but steady, like the pulse of the earth itself. Stay with me, because in this stillness, every thread we've gathered begins to weave together. The terraces remind us of resilience, patient steps carved into mountainsides that still feed lives. The roads remind us of connection, threads binding valleys and people, guiding footsteps across distances. The festivals remind us of joy, the sacredness of laughter, and songs shared in circles of community. The rituals remind us of reverence, gratitude offered to sun, moon, and Pachamama. The language reminds us of memory, syllables soft as lullabies carrying stories across centuries. And all of these together remind us of belonging, the gentle truth that no life is separate, that we are always part of a larger whole. Pause for a moment and imagine the empire not as rulers and conquests, but as a hearth. A fire burns at its center, glowing steadily. Around it, families gather, weaving, cooking, singing, telling stories. The warmth of the hearth is the warmth of community, of shared life. This is what endures, not walls or crowns, but the comfort of togetherness. Isn't it common to think that at the heart of every empire, every culture, every history, is something so familiar, so human, so tender? Now let us drift into twilight thoughts, reflections softened by the dark. The Inca lived with a sense of harmony between opposites, sun and moon, sky and earth, life and death. Perhaps this harmony is the lesson that settles with us now, that life is not about clinging to one side or fearing the other, but about letting both exist together as night and day do. Isn't it peaceful to imagine ourselves as part of that rhythm, breathing in, breathing out, steady and unhurried? Stay close, for we are nearing the end, but endings must be gentle. Imagine walking once more along an Inca road. The path stretches ahead, lit by moonlight. To your left, terraces step down into shadow. To your right, mountains rise like guardians. Each step feels both ancient and new, echoing the footsteps of those who walked before, carrying the promise of those who will walk after. Isn't it soothing to think of yourself not as alone on the path, but as part of an endless flow of footsteps, each one linked, each one belonging? Pause here and let us look back. From the first chapter's whispers of beginnings, through valleys, rituals, daily life, wisdom, endurance, and legacy, we have walked gently through the Inca world. The story has carried us across more than words. It has carried us through textures, sounds, flavors, and feelings. And now, as it tapers into stillness, What remains is not noise, but calm, not distance, but closeness. The Inca story has become a soft companion, guiding us gently towards sleep. And here is a gentle promise fulfilled. History does not have end in loss. The Inca remind us that legacy continues, that life endures in terraces, in songs, in languages, in gratitude for earth, in laughter by hearts. The story whispers that we too are part of continuity, that what we love, what we tend, what we share will ripple forward quietly, even when we are gone. Isn't it soothing to rest in that thought? That nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed, carried onward in new forms? Now let us rest fully. The fire of the empire burns low, but its embers glow steady. The stars wheel above, constant and serene. The mountains breathe their slow breath, eternal and unshaken. And you, wrapped in warmth, listening to the story, are part of that same quiet endurance. Close your eyes. Feel the steadiness beneath you, the calm of earth, the hush of history. You are safe, you are held, you are part of something unbroken. And as the chapter ends, let the story taper into silence, like a river flowing gently into the sea. Let the whispers of the Inca fade into the rhythm of your own breath. Let the continuity of terraces, songs, and stars soothe you into dreams. And if you drift into sleep now, know that the story will still be with you, steady as mountains, gentle as night. Thank you for walking through this long journey with me. If you wish, you may return again, or wander into another story from the all-night playlist. But for now, rest in gratitude, rest in belonging, rest in calm. The story is complete, and yet it continues, humming softly as you drift into sleep.